Welcome to the Lightforge. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps, and we actually have stuff to talk about this week, don't we?
Do we? I feel like, so little has happened in the arena in the last 4 weeks that it's surprising that we have news. What is going on, Blizzard? Like, you just, a whole month of adventure rollout, followed immediately, like within a week, by like the biggest news to hit I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say this is literally the biggest news to hit Arena since they released the Arena.
Right. It's the only thing that's happened to the arena other than the standard expansions.
Yeah.
Right? There has not been a change from the status quo since the game has come out. And we were kind of almost giving up hope, but we're like, no. Like, it's one day there's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back and big stuff has to come out.
Yeah.
And camel's back has been broken.
The big stuff has come out.
Big stuff has come out.
Oh my
God.
God.
So how about you explain it? Because
okay,
how about you explain it?
I'll take a stab at explaining what happened. So if you've been not checking the internet furiously and clicking refresh on Reddit, because that's where like Blizzard announces stuff. Actually, no, the Blizzard post has even made it to like the actual like Battle.net launcher for Hearthstone, where they're advertising like the arena actually for, again, what feels like the first time that they actually have advertised for the arena in their own game. So what's happening is that because there's all these mages in the arena right now, and there's this whole thing where mages are doing way better than all the other classes, and they keep getting really good cards, and they're already really good and all of that. And so Blizzard decided that was a problem. And the way to properly resolve the problem is to give mages more flame strikes and more fireballs and more ethereal conjurers, because that would be good for the arena balance. And so they implemented a series of changes which will have that effect, so that we get to see more. I've been calling for more for more flame strikes since like I think TGT, maybe like BRM. And Blizzard has finally come around to my way of seeing things when it comes to flame strike in the arena, and so we are getting more flame strikes in the arena.
So that's kind of an explanation as to what happened.
Is that not the full explanation? Did something else happen? Am I missing something?
I hate this. All right. So what happened was, during this past week, Blizzard came out with big news that the arena will be changing in a big way by getting rid of certain cards for classes. They looked at all the classes and said, all right, we have two sort of OP classes in the Mage and the Rogue. And they decided, well, okay, we are going to get rid of some of the really good cards for Mage and Rogue. For example, Forgotten Torch, Snowchugger, Faceless Summoner for Mage. Rogue gets hit really hard by getting Goblin Auto Barber and Undercity Valiant being taken away. Paladin has no changes because Paladin is the most fair and balanced and fun and just the best class overall.
Seriously, it does feel like Blizzard thinks that, doesn't it? Like every time something happens. Right. It's like Mage should be OP, Paladins are good, doesn't matter what happens.
Right. And the rest of the classes, Shaman, Warlock, Druid, Warrior, Hunter, and Priest, got a lot of bad, quote unquote, or underperforming cards taken
They're
away.
all below average.
We'll talk about all of them.
We'll go down. This is what this whole podcast is about.
Yes.
It's going to be about this is big. This is like really huge. And I was obviously being facetious when I was saying that they're going to raise the offering rates of Flame Strike. It's true, they are, because when these cards leave the arena, they're going to be filled by old cards. Karazhan cards won't get more of a bonus. Thank God. But all the old cards, it's not like the old cards. It seems like the way the system works, and I tweeted Ixar and I got a response, and it's that the pool of old cards is just all treated the same. So whenever you take one of the old cards out, all the other cards will kind of like fill in the gap a little. And because we know that the offering rate for class cards is double that of regular cards, I think that's going to be preserved as well. So just everything just expands to fill the gap. So for something like Paladin, nothing changes, obviously, because no cards are being removed. For something like Rogue, 2 cards are leaving, so every other card gets like a tiny bit of offering bonus. For something like Mage, 3 cards, 3 common cards. So like your common class cards are going to be somewhat significantly affected. Like we're talking like 15% at most, right? Like more often seen in the arena here. Probably less than that. Probably more like 8% more often seen in the arena, which doesn't sound like a lot, but do you really want to see 8% more flame strikes? Like, it's something you need to consider. Again, I do want to see 8% more flame strikes. I really like this change. But that's like kind of the effect we're dealing with. And you go down the list and you look at, let's say, a Fiery War Axe for Warrior, right? Well, that's double whatever the Mage was getting because you're reducing double the amount of cards that Mage got reduced by. So your Fiery War Axes will be going up by actually like 15%. These are like impactful things to the meta. And I think that's the way to think about these shit. Like, we'll go over, like, card by card. It's easy to, like, I think most people's first reactions of looking at these is, oh, these bad cards are going to be gone. But that's not the point, right? You're never taking these bad cards. It's not like you should think, oh, where I normally would have had a snipe, I would have something else. You should think of it as, well, I'm just going to be offered, like, an average card instead of that, and then I will get a choice between 3 cards. So the average quality of that particular pick is going to go up by, like, 10 point, like, you know, not too much, but it's all going to go up by a little bit. And by the same token, what this means is that the top cards have an offering bonus relative to where we were before. So that's how the meta's going to change. What's going to happen is that the bad classes, so to speak, that got all these bad cards removed are going to be much more consistent, and their top class cards are going to be offered a little bit more often. And the top class cards for all the classes actually are going to be offered a little bit more often, except for Paladin.
Right. I think, you know, before we dig in too deeply, we should also sort of summarize, like, what else was said in the, like, official message, right? So, you know, this is the big thing. Cards are being taken away from the arena in order to sort of, you know, promote balance and also fun, right? These are two things I think they specifically talked about. You know, they want it to be fun, but they also want, like, this balance that they see sort of getting out of hand. They, you know, Blizzard hasn't said that, like, okay, this is the solution to end all solutions. You guys better be happy with it. They, you know, they basically also said this is sort of a work in progress. We also recognize other avenues to fix or to tweak the arena experience, such as, you know, adjusting rarities or something. But they basically said, here's what we got right now. We're hoping that it will sort of supercharge the arena. Everyone will have a lot more fun, and it shows sort of our devotion to changing up the experience, which I think at the end of the day, you know, but before we go into the possible criticisms, I just want to say, like, this is a long time coming, but thank you. Like, this is good, right?
Yeah, good. Like, we're going to launch into, because we analyze, right? And when you analyze, you necessarily critique, or else it's a pointless analysis, right? So we're going to critique the system. We're going to say, like, how to make it better, what it does well, like, all the things. But at the base, Blizzard did something in the arena that's, like, incredible. Like, every time Blizzard does something, it's like, oh my god, Blizzard did something in the arena. This is huge. And it's using the tools they already have, right? This is what they did with Cthulhu. This is what they did with Purify. They didn't have to program anything new in. They just had to, like, make a decision from, like, the design team and the balance team to say, all right, we're going to do this. Let's go, right? So there is something else coming. It doesn't seem like they fully know what yet, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be coming in, like, the next 6 months, but it also doesn't seem like it's going to take them, like, another year to do it either. Like, it's just from the way they're talking about it, it sounds like something coming in, the 6 month to 1 year period. And it's going to not just be this. They're going to continuously, like, add and remove cards from the arena for balancing purposes, it seems like, but, like, not too frequently, I'm guessing, given the Hearthstone philosophy. But this is, I mean, if you look back at all the cards in Constructed that have been nerfed and all the balancing changes that have been made, that's not, like, you know, just printing new cards. This is about, like, in one go, this is about as much tweaking as Blizzard did for, like, all the adjustments done for Constructed purposes in the last 2 years. Like, it's a big deal. So definitely thank Blizzard for doing this, and they saw a problem and they reacted very quickly, because the problem didn't come to, like, it was getting very apparent, but it didn't come to, like, a boiling point until Karazhan was fully released and the offering bonus kicked in, right?
Right.
And that was, like, Thursday, and they had something to announce by like early this past week. So it took them less than half a week to go from, oh crap, this is blowing up, to, all right, we're going to do this, which is a really fast turnaround. It's very impressive.
Yeah. And also, as of right now, even though they've put out this news, they haven't put out an exact time on which it will be implemented.
Tuesday.
So
It's gonna be Tuesday.
probably, hopefully, we'll see.
Hopefully it's Tuesday. We have a tier list update that's coming out that we've been trying to get out in forever, but it's almost like fully done, and so we're just gonna hold off until the whole thing's fully done. So if you look at the tier list right now, the Lightforge.com, it's a little wonky. It'll be right again in a like. I find it difficult to describe it this way, but it'll be like. It'll actually fully incorporate the changes of the meta as we've seen it since Thursday. By priests 4-drops will have changes, warrior weapons 1-drops, high drops, they're all going to be like rebalanced. That's going to happen. That's going to kick in sometime next week. I'm hoping to be able to beat the Blizzard patch, but maybe not. And just to give you a highlight of what all these big arena changes coming is going to do when it comes to your draft, it's not going to affect anything. Like, that's the weird part, right? Like, Blizzard did something which balanced the arena between the classes, but within your particular class, it really doesn't affect your draft that much. You'll just find yourself getting better cards if you're using a bad class, and you'll find yourself, like, imperceptibly getting, like, slightly worse cards if you're a mage or a rogue. So, it's actually, like for a inelegant solution, which is like the solution is really like a stopgap measure, right? It's highly inelegant.
Right.
You're just taking random cards out of the arena, but that's because they don't have the tools to do anything else at this point, and they're working on it. But for an inelegant solution, it actually has minimal disruption to how you would normally draft in the arena. And however, it will have very perceptible change effects in terms of the class balance you see in the arena, but definitely in terms of the class power. So there's always going to be this drag, right? Like, Crip only plays Mage and Rogue and whatever. I watch Crip, so I play Mage and Rogue and whatever, right? Like, that's a very normal thing. And the game starts you out with Mage, right? Like, the tutorial's
Right.
about Mage. Like, you're going to just have more Mage players than anything else. You're going to have more Paladin players because of how easy of a class it is. And Blizzard can't change that with balance. But at this point, hopefully, what the net impact is going to be is you're going to step into the arena with a priest or with a warrior or with a hunter, and you're not going to feel as disadvantaged as you did before. Even though in the wider meta, like, some people are thinking, oh, there's so many mages, it's going to, like, this will more or less solve the problem. It's not, and it's not meant to, because Blizzard can't control player behavior. and player behavior is not necessarily 100% correlated with the top level play of a particular class, or even the average level play of a particular class. It's correlated somewhat, but it's not like a one-to-one thing.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting what you talked about. Like, this is definitely a stopgap measure, because if you keep on going down this route, it sets this weird sort of basically, if Blizzard says, like, oh, I think this is the solution, we're going to keep on going with it, that means, like, players don't get to decide the quote, like, destiny of the arena, right? Basically, like, as you play, Blizzard is like, okay, we are going to sort of play God in this sense,
Yes.
and determine sort of what cards come out, and we won't allow players to sort of adjust, right?
Mm-hmm.
For example, if they want to really micromanage this game and they were very sort of knee-jerk reactionary, like, I don't know if we would have seen the player transition from a very control trade style from
Right.
the very beginning of the game, when people didn't really understand the game,
Yeah.
into a highly sort of tempo-oriented, aggressive play style that happened in GVG,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So this is good for now, but it's sort of dangerous in that if you keep on doing it, you take a lot of the destiny of the game out of the player's hands.
But isn't, like, Blizzard's always controlling the destiny of the game, right? Every time an expansion comes out and they're, like, adding stuff, what it's taking away is the elegance of it. So, like, what you're looking at is, look, there's just a bunch of cards and we're going to give it to you randomly and you're going to play it, right? There's a very elegant system. It's kind of like you said, right? You think the players are in full control of their destiny. What you mean is, against the assumed basis that we're just going to give you random cards, players can control their destiny and carve out a meta from that. And now Blizzard is, like, really sticking their hand in and saying, like, wow, we don't want these in, we don't want those in. Well, they've been doing it all along, just without thinking about the arena as much by releasing new cards. So I don't think that's necessarily a problem. And you look at any other game, right? Like you look at League of Legends, you look at Overwatch, you get balances. And one of the big complaints about Hearthstone is that in Constructed is that they don't come in and like nerf cards, or like they don't come in and buff like really bad unplayable cards in Constructed. And the idea is if you just create a balance, if you like stick your hand in and do play God a little, you're going to end up with a better result, even if it's not an elegant, clean result. And Blizzard has actually, for their part, always held on to the stance that cards are cards. They're like physical cards. We don't want to touch it. We don't want to like go overboard and tweak it all the time. We want people to have that consistency. It's like a casual game too, and we don't want casual players to like be unable to keep up, right? To come back and like have no idea what the hell is going on anymore.
Right.
And I think it's a good philosophy for this game in terms of just how the game is designed. And we as players who would keep up with this, who are listening to an arena specific podcast, you know, who do play arena all the time at a very high level, like we have to deal with that. And I think that's fine. And like, I just don't think Blizzard playing God is necessarily a bad thing. It does break the elegance, and you know how much I like consistency and elegance in my systems. I think in this case it was kind of a necessary casualty, and I can't imagine. We'll talk about this later on when we talk about arena design in the future. I can't think of a way for Blizzard to actually make an elegant solution to this. I don't know.
No, there isn't. Because if there was one, because one of the big subsets of elegance, right? Because elegance is a weird word. One of the big subsets of elegance is simplicity, right? In order to be elegant, you have to be simple and effective. Like it has to be simplistic and effective.
The fewer rules, the better.
Right, exactly. But if that were the case, we would have had a solution by now.
Well, not necessarily, right? It's also about how much Blizzard cares about this and what kind of people they put on this. And
sure. But
like one of the big issues about them like playing God that you're worried about is that do they really know what they're doing, right? Like we were talking about Mike Denice's comments about how Firelance Portal and Babbling Book, they're both great cards. They're like about the same, like but. Maybe they got better people. Maybe they're committed to thinking about it more. Maybe before it was just like one or two people looking at it. Now that they're actually changing things all the time, they'll like put more focus on it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I just don't think there is an elegant solution. Just because we talked about it with quite a few arena players and streamers. Everyone has their ideas, but whenever you pitch an idea, you always think of sort of the counter argument to it, right? And it's not, and the counter argument is rarely like, oh, it'll be hard to implement, so I don't see them doing it. It's always like, well, there's this other factor that really cuts against like the fun factor, or is just sort of the competitive factor or something. So, like, I understand to some degree why they haven't done anything in 2 years.
Yep. I'm with you. So, okay, before we get, and we're going to talk more along this lines in this like theoretical way and kind of go deeper into that. But before we get there, I want to talk about like the specific changes. We actually haven't like gone over all the specific changes. I'm just going to go down the list of like all the cards removed.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about the actual like more detailed in terms of the actual mechanical effects. Like if you were playing the arena, how should you what should you expect to see? And then we'll go into design what they should do. Okay, so all right. So we went over Mage, Forgotten Torch, Snowchugger, Faceless Summoner. We went into Rogue, Goblin, Autobarber, Undercity Valiant. Those are all out. Paladin, no change. Okay, so now the ones are what we consider the like bad classes or like the non-good classes. Okay, Shaman, Vitality Totem, Dust Devil, Totemic Might, Ancestral Healing, Dunewall Shaman, Windspeaker, out. Warlock, Anima Golem, Sacrificial Pact, Curse of Rafam, Sense Demons, Void Crusher, Reliquary Seeker, Succubus, out. Druid, Savagery, Poison Seeds, Soul of the Forest, Mark of Nature, Tree of Life, Astral Communion, out. Warrior, Warsong Commander, Bolster, Charge, Bouncing Blade, Axe Flinger, Rampage, Ogre Warmaul, out. Hunter, Starving Buzzard, Call Pet, Timberwolf, Cobra Shot, Lock and Load, Dart Trap, Snipe, out. Priest, Mind Blast, Shadow Bomber, Lightwell, Power Word Glory, Confuse, Convert, Inner Fire, out. Those are the cards that are going out. And there's many interesting things in here, but I'm going to start the discussion on one topic, which is, and I think this is the one that's probably near and dear to most people's hearts. Mage and Rogue. Who got nerfed more? Mage lost 3 cards. Forgotten Torch, Snowchugger, and Faceless Summoner. Rogue only lost 2 cards. Goblin Autobarber and Undercity Valiant. But I think most people would say that the Rogue's 2 cards are better than the Mage's 3 cards. Any of the Mage's cards. Like, I would take an Undercity Valiant or a Goblin Autobarber over a Faceless Summoner any day. And Faceless Summoner is probably the best card in the bunch.
Yeah, so part of the reason that Rogue got hit harder, in my opinion, is just because Rogue plays in a very sort of board swingy early to mid game tempo style, right? And what happened here is you're not only just weakening Rogue's 2-drops and sort of small drops, you're weakening 2 of their most powerful tempo plays, right? A 3/2 body, which a lot of times is what Rogue wants, because if you're on the board, if you are being the aggressor, you probably want 3/2s. If you're trying to play more reactionary, for example, with Mage, you want 2/3s, as we'll talk about with Snowchugger. But both of these are 3/2s. Both of these have initiative. Both of these are sort of MVP cards in a deck that can really help you, with the coin, or just with a cheap minion or spell, sort of swing the board around, help you get that advantage, and then you follow it up with your Eviscerates and Shadow Strikes, and you win, right? Taking away sort of Rogue's, so if you see that this is Rogue's pathway to victory, this is the spear that pierces the enemies, you are taking away 2 of the major weapons for Rogue that does this, and now. Rogues have to, they still have good 2-drops. Defias Ringleader will remind you that it still exists, but it really weakens them significantly in terms of extra damage that they can put out during a turn. So it just cuts into the Rogue's strongest sort of strategy. So I definitely expect Rogues to be hit a lot harder than Mages.
Okay, I'm with you. I think Rogues are hit harder than Mages too, and I want to point out. I think most of the reason for this is because of Forgotten Torch, which is that Forgotten Torch is not a great card. It's a good card, but you're not losing that much if you replace Forgotten Torch with a median-ish kind of card, right? You're losing some things, but it's not at the same, anywhere near the same level as a Faceless Summoner, Goblin Autobarber, Undercity Valiant, or Snowchugger. Snowchugger's really good.
Snowchugger's really good. Yeah. I think a lot of people undervalue that freeze.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting, because one thing that you'll notice that what Blizzard did not do is they did not come out and take away your flame strikes. They did not take away your fireballs. They did not take away they didn't take away the best cards from Mage and Rogue. They took away Rogue, it's arguable. I think if you're really good at the arena in Rogue, you understand that Goblin Autobarber and Undercity Valiant are better than Eviscerates, pretty much, or pretty much the same as Eviscerates at worst.
Right.
I'm trying to see where we rate the cards at, but I think it's very set. Yeah, Undercity Valiant's at 80, Autobarber's at 88, Eviscerate's at 80, Backstab's at 76, right? SI7 Agent's at 86. These kinds of early game tempo swings that deal multiple damages to stuff, they're just really good. Shadow Strike's only an 80. Sap is a 76. These are better cards than a lot of what people think of as the Rogue's premium cards. And so, but I think it's interesting that they didn't remove the key cards that you associate with Mage and Rogue, right? If you're thinking about Rogue, you're not associating Rogue with Undercity Valiant and Goblin Autobarber, even though those are just as good, if not better, than the cards you do associate Rogue with, right? When people complain about Rogue, they complain about Backstab. They complain about Sap, right? They're oh, that's so unfair. And then you look at our tier list and you're like, wait, but those cards aren't rated as good as Undercity Valiant and Goblin Autobarber. And I think Blizzard, for Rogue at least, they really seized on this idea. They're look, we have a perfect ability here to take away really good cards for the Rogue, and even better in this meta without 2-drops. And we can do that and totally weaken the Rogue, which is our goal, without affecting the kind of we're going to call it the soul of the class, right? Without affecting the soul of the class, we can make this happen. And same with Mage, right? Faceless Summoner was never part of the soul. When it came out, we were like, all right, that's kind of weird that Mage has this card.
That was one of the main complaints about it. They're like, why are you giving mages a beefy minion?
Yeah, right.
They're not about beefy minions. They're about, like, you know, if you gave them another, like, big removal or heavy AoE removal, we're like, okay, you know, that's sort of what the mage is about, right? Like, flame strikiest, whatever.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, well, that fits with the class. But yeah, so this is definitely something that Blizzard wanted to do. They want to preserve a certain feel for the classes, right? Like what, and I think this touches upon like a topic we talked about in many Lightforges, like what happens when expansion after expansion, all classes like start becoming the same, right? Druids have hard removals, paladins have hard removals. Mages are, you know, they have their like Defias ringleader with spell power or something. So this is definitely a way for them to cut back on that and be like, mages play this way, rogues play this way, shamans play that way.
Yep. And so we're going to, and I'm going to come back to this a lot. It's the soul of the class concept, and it's what Blizzard's been doing with it. And I'll have some negative things to say too on some of the other classes. But Rogue, for example, is a great way to get rid of power while keeping the soul of the class. Mage is a little more iffy. Faceless Summoner's, you know, obviously like a weird card to have, and I'm so glad it's not in the arena anymore. And it will be like a big difference, right? Because it's 6 and then 7. Now you're missing 6, and so it opens up a lot of things. But Forgotten Torch, it's part of, it's not like deep in the soul of the mage, but it's definitely like along with what mages normally do. But you can take away a removal and be okay, you know? It's not like a particularly unique removal in the sense of like, oh, you know, I think Rogue, I think Eviscerate, right? You don't think like Mage or Forgotten Torch. So I think it's a very well designed card. I don't think it's that powerful. It's a weird thing to like have it be a casualty of this. But in terms of like, once Forgotten Torch is gone for like 3 months, no one will think about Forgotten Torch ever again.
Nope.
Like, no one will miss it. So right now we're thinking, wow, that's a weird thing to take away because it was fine. But I think they just wanted to like reduce the mage, just knock the mage down a little bit more. And they like couldn't find a good card to do it with in the common slot. And so they ended up with Forgotten Torch, which is kind of true. I was trying to put myself in Blizzard's shoes. And I'm like looking down at all the common cards and I'm seeing what I would remove that's like, you know, of a good amount of power, right? Like, there's nothing.
Yeah.
Mages have like really good cards, but they're also like, I'm glad they didn't take away Ethereal Conjurer. You know, that's like such a mage card now. Like, what else?
It really is a card. Like Ethereal Conjurer is a card in which I'm like, but that really just fits, right? It's a great card, but the speed and sort of the feel of it, it really does fit the mage. Like the Faceless Summoner was never. It's just a RNG stat stick.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So the one thing that I posted this on Reddit, and I got a response from Ixar on it, is about Flame Cannon and Forgotten Torch. Which is, I was like, look, I would take Flame Cannon away, and I still would take Flame Cannon away. I hate Flame Cannon because of the RNG, obviously. And Flame Cannon is more powerful. So you're kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone, in my view of this. And he gave, I think it's a very good and well-thought-out response, which is that, you know, they thought about it. Obviously, they looked at it because they're looking at the same thing we're looking at. And they came up with the idea that, well, the RNG, when it's controlled, is more skillful and is something we want to see in the arena. So they specifically kept Flame Cannon because it is controlled RNG in many/most cases. And so they wanted to keep that element in, even if it actually makes the mage stronger than if they had gotten rid of it compared to Forgotten Torch. So they wanted this element in. Which, you know, you can agree or disagree with it, but I think they have a reason for it, which is all I'm kind of concerned with. That they thought about it, and they weren't like, oh, Forgotten Torch and Flame Cannon, they're pretty much the same card. We're just going to flip a coin, you know, or like whatever they were doing. It's a, you know, obviously I don't like any direction that favors even more RNG in the arena, but Flame Cannon is not the worst type of RNG, right?
No, it definitely isn't. But so with Rogue and Mage, like I can see what they are trying to do. Like they're trying to make Rogue's most like deadly sort of weapon a little bit weaker, right? With Mage, they're just taking away some good cards overall. And I can understand. Like, I don't. I think if you ask like 5 different people who play Arena, like, what would you change with these? Like, you'd get 5 different answers. Right?
I don't know about that. But would you
I think
really? For Mage and Rogue?
For example, you said you would replace like Forgotten Torch with Flame Cannon,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think I would replace Forgotten Torch with something like Twilight Flamecaller. I
Really?
think Twilight Flamecaller is a big problem in the arena. Right
Wow.
now. Yeah.
Oh, I think Twilight Flamecaller is such a mage card. Because
It is such a mage
it's an
card.
AoE.
No, it's an AoE, but for a long time, like, unless you were willing to draft Arcane Explosion, which made Arcane Explosion good, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Cone of Cold, Arcane Explosion.
right,
This is something mage
they're
does.
fine. But giving them another way to do small AoE and then adding the big AoEs, like, it eliminates a lot of ways to counter the mage potentially, right? Like,
Kind of, but like that's what the mage's game is, right? I feel like it's so solidified that control mage playstyle to have Twilight Flame Callers.
Right. No. It definitely solidified the control sort of aspect. But, like, other classes, when they try to play control, they always have a weakness to it, right? Like, Priest tries to play control, but it's like, well, you can with Deaths and Pains and other, like, Entombs, but it's always awkward. Like, a third of the time...
because you don't have your combo. You don't have that Arcanite combo.
Yeah. Something like that. Mages, they just have AoEs, which always deal damage, doesn't matter, whatever. Or they always have like direct damage or from like Flame Lance or Polymorph. Like, it's non-situational. And one big way to beat mages before was to just rush them down, right? Now I can't really just put down Worgen Infiltrator, Biofin Tidehunter and be like, okay, I can rush this guy down. Now I'm just like, all right, now if he has the Twilight Flame Caller and lose on turn 3. It just covers a base that I think you should leave mages vulnerable in that sense. Force them to either draft the Arcane Missiles or Arcane Explosion, or they are really behind,
It's interesting.
Yeah.
So, like, Forgotten Torch is a card where if you go into the late game, this card is more powerful.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Twilight Flamecaller is a card that gets you to the late game if you're playing the control style. So I think you just want the control style to be less effective and, like, to have it trigger less. And you're much more okay with it being like, oh, look, I'm with the mage, it's the late game, I'm supposed to lose.
I think
the way I'm going is more like you need to prevent, like, a mage should be able to be very control. A mage should be able to be very aggressive. A mage should be able to do all these things. And depending on how you build your deck, you get there. But when you get there, just because you got there doesn't mean you become super powerful.
No, it doesn't mean you get super powerful. But I'm always very weary whenever a card seriously shores up a weakness from that class. I'm always just like, all right, like, we got to think carefully about this.
But a mage,
card.
it was never a weakness of the mage, or it was never supposed to be a weakness of the mage. Let me clarify that. I think it was a design issue, or I think it's more of a meta issue than a design issue that Arcane Explosion wasn't better. Like, Arcane Explosion is like slightly underpowered for what it should do, but it's still like the average to above average card. It's just never gotten the traction.
I think everyone was just a little bit wrong on Arcane Explosion.
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
Yeah. Like, I remember one day it just hit me, and I was drafting Arcane Explosion. I'm like, wow, I really freaking like this card. And I'm just like, why haven't I liked it previously? There are so many times in
which... Because back in the day, Trump said it wasn't that great, and we're like, yep, it wasn't that great. And then we thought about every card, and then we got to Arcane Explosion, and we're like, yeah, it's not that great.
Yeah.
And then even though every time we drafted it, it kind of worked out, we never went back and said, oh yeah, it's probably better than that. Or we did, but we never, like, moved it up the appropriate amount. Right. Until now, we're gonna get it right this time.
Yeah, but anyways, I don't want to go down this pathway and like talk about Twilight Flamecaller for 10 more minutes. But that's a change that I would do, okay. Right? And I can't even imagine how much discussion went into the developers' sort of roundtable discussion, because I think everyone would have said something different. I really do.
I think there are very few choices in there, so you only have like a multiple choice question. I don't think it's like a open-ended question here, because like there's only so many cards that make sense for you to get rid of. Yeah. Okay, I mean, I want to talk about Snowchugger though, because I think that one is like the definition of a card you shouldn't get rid of. I can see why you got rid of it, because so one of the things that with Mage and Rogue is, Snowchugger is a 2-drop. Goblin Autobarber, Understudy Valiant are both 2-drops. They're trying to make these decks like these classes really like focus on the control side. And or rather for Rogue, they're trying to make them like hero dagger on turn 2, right? Which is a totally viable thing for Rogue to do, and I kind of like that. I don't think Rogue needs a whole bunch of 2-drops. Their 2-drops should be all more like combo triggers or like combo recipients, right? But for the Mage, you're getting rid of one card at the big end, Faceless Summoner, and you're going to get rid of one card on the fast tempo end on the Snowchugger side. And so I can see why they're doing it. But when it comes to like soul of the class, Mages freeze. Water Elemental used to be seen 1.5 times per deck, if not more. It is now seen like half. Like, I don't mean like 0.75, I mean like 0.5 per deck. It's because it's dilution, right? And Snowchugger had really done a great job of filling in that gap, because now between Snowchugger and Water Elemental, you get like more than one, right? And so you'll have a minion that freezes things, and you're kind of in a good place with Mage and freezing things. There's nothing that takes the place of Snowchugger. It's also why it's so annoying, right? It's so annoying because it does something totally different that's very Mage-like, and there are certain classes that get hard countered by this, right? Especially like Warrior, where your removals are your weapons. You are frozen. You can't use your weapons. Like, it was just never terribly well thought out, I think, by Blizzard to begin with. And so I think they're backing off this ability to, like, repeatedly freeze someone forever, you know? Like,
yeah, like Snowchugger, I see this move, getting rid of Snowchugger as it's just too powerful, right? It's just too powerful for, like, the effect is way too good for it, and the body is just way too good. Like I said, mages like having 2/3s, right? If you're a control class, you want sort of these beefy minions that'll stick around, right? Like, help you supplement damage from your spells. And also, if it has a freeze effect, you don't want to be a glass cannon, right?
But what it should do... sorry, go ahead.
No. So, like, what I see with the Snowchugger, like, yes, mages freeze, but I don't think they want it to have access to such a cheap freeze, because freeze is pretty expensive in the game. Water Ellie is sort of the exception, but, all classes have, one of those exceptions.
But that's why it's the exception. It's
a
Mage thing.
Sure, no, but Water Ellie is the exception. They don't want it to have two exceptions.
But that's the thing, though. Right? Water Ellie was the exception, and now Water Ellie is a third of a Water Ellie. So you need something else so that Water Ellie can still be Water Ellie. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
If we 1/3 the offering rate of Flame Strike, we should have a Flame Strike here, Flame Strike. That's the whole thing.
But then, we're talking about just general dilution. Like, every class is diluted. If you think that mages...
Well, that's why we keep giving warriors weapons every now and then, and we keep giving, mages board clears or whatever removals every now and then. Mages got
Shatter to go along with the, the freeze thing.
Oh my god.
I mean, I joke, but, like, this is something...
So what I'm saying is, you're diluting the mage out of its soul. And I think part of it is the design. I think the issue is not that it freezes, is that it freezes every single turn. And that causes a problem against a warrior especially, but also really any class with a weapon. Like, Druid gets hurt a lot by it as well. And they didn't want that. But when you don't want that, what you can really do is change it. Instead of saying, like, freeze anything it hits, say, like, freeze anything it hits that's not already frozen. So then you can't chain the freeze. So you have to get, like, you get a respite turn. You can't be frozen 2 turns in a row.
Yeah,
like,
but once again,
problem
that's not
solved.
Elegant, right? Like, no, you're changing the card now. I think what they're going to do, because you know how Snowchugger is already out of standard, right? They're just going to print a weaker Snowchugger in the future. But for now, they don't want Snowchugger in the arena.
They should. I think they need to print out more things that freeze. It's the mage. Snowchugger was a key part of mages. Because how many freeze cards do mages get right now in the meta? Like, how many per draft? 1?
I don't know.
Less than 1? Not more than 1 on average. Well, you've just, like, gotten rid of a third of the things you would take that would freeze, right?
Sure.
Like, that's a huge blow to freezing things.
Freezing is part of the, if you want to call it the soul of the mage, but it's not the only thing, right?
Right, but I don't like anything that hurts the soul of the classes.
Like you said, it's been hurt just by expansions. Look at, if you want
to... Yeah, I just mean, like, you don't need to kick it when it's down, right? Like,
right.
Well, the soul of the Druid is different than what it used to be.
No. So
It's like the soul of the.
I like how we use that word now for Druid. No. With Druid, it's just quote different.
No, the
Mage
soul.
has been taking away.
Well, no, what I mean is they went in a different direction, right? They started adding all these beast synergies or whatever. That was never a part of the soul of the Druid.
Well, no, I mean not just beast synergies. Like dipping into these hard removals and everything.
They don't really
right?
have hard removals.
Mulch, recycle.
Yeah, rares.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not. We're talking about a different thing here. This is like a fundamental card, and it's not like Druids never had hard removals. They had hard removals with costs, right? Like Naturalize was always a common Druid card.
Right,
just because
sorry.
it happens to suck doesn't mean it's not part of the kit.
Right. I mean, hard removals.
And Mulch is the same thing. What does Mulch do?
Weird.
Doesn't it sound like Naturalize? Kill something, give your opponent a card? How is that not part of the soul of the Druid? That's kind of what the Druid does when it kills something. It gives the opponent a card. What's Recycle?
It's mostly
kill something, give your opponent a card. Like, I think it all fits very well thematically.
But a lot of it is just like access to these.
Yeah, that's why they're rare, to fight the dilution. Naturalize had a higher offering rate in Classic than Naturalize plus Mulch plus Recycle do today.
Right. Like, no one is going to say, like, the Druid is completely different, but it's the creep, right? Like, from the beginning of the game, all classes have creeped out into this thing where...
I don't think that's a good example, though. I think you just... The Druid... All the hard removal cards for the Druids follow the same exact pattern. It's very much in the soul of the Druid, and they haven't even gotten more of it. They've like been fighting the dilution effect, just like Snowchugger fights the dilution effect for Water Elemental. I think it's actually perfectly aligned. I don't know. You're trying to draw this as like, oh, look what they did with the Druid. You should be mad at that if you're also mad at this. No, I think they're the same. So I'm mad at the Mage one because they're actually taking it away.
So what would you have done differently?
In
just
terms
keep
of
Snowchugger and
like, I would just keep Snowchugger, huh?
Are you still taking away 2-drop? That's the thing.
Well, no, that's the thing, right? Like, I would not. If I were to take a 2-drop away, it would obviously be Medu's Valet, right? That's the most stupid 2-drop that the mages have, but you can't take it away yet. So what I'm hoping is that they'll actually put Snowchugger back in the meta once the Karazhan is over and take away Medu's Valet. But I would not have moved away Snowchugger at all. I'm actually more okay with Forgotten Torch going away than Snowchugger because Forgotten Torch has a lot of like replacements, right? Like Frost Bolts, really... Flame Cannon, like there's a bunch of stuff mages do that remove. They don't really freeze, and it's such a large chunk of the pie. So you're right, it does kind of fix itself if the mages get a freeze effect the next expansion, right? But
3 mana, 3/3 Snowchugger.
There we go. But in this middle space, the mage has lost a part of its soul, and I really want to see it come back. So I don't think the Snowchugger removal was necessary. But again, right? Like it's hard to find cards to remove. We've been over this. Like they're all so key. Mage is such like a well-designed class. People hate on it, but I love how the mage is designed in this game.
I think you brought up something interesting that you're like, oh, they could like. I mean, I know you don't actually mean they can bring back Snowchugger. It was just sort of a thought experiment. Do you think they would ever do that?
Yeah, I think they could. Why not? It's a card. It's in the game.
But I mean, that seems to be like. Then you have to remember, it's like, oh, is Snowchugger in? Like, is it in the game for this month? Like, I know it was gone. I know it's coming back. Like, I don't think they. I think it is final. Like, just.
Oh, I hope it's not final. It's Snowchugger. Everyone loves Snowchugger too. It's a beloved card.
Right, but from Blizzard's perspective, that's the worst thing to do. To take a card out, put it back in. Take a card out, put it back in.
No, you're right. You're right. They probably wouldn't do that. Okay, so I feel like we spent enough time on this topic. I just really wanted to get on the record that I wanted Snowchugger in the game, and when the Chugga is out, I would be very sad. Even though I'm a warrior guy, right? Like I play warrior a lot. I love that Snowchugger's not in the meta anymore. It helps the warrior so much, especially with all the mages around. But like it was part of what the mage did. Okay, so what are the next thing I want to talk about is 2-drops, right? Segueing in from here, we went over rogues lost a lot of 2-drops, but it's kind of okay because they have a dagger, right? 2-drops are never as important to rogues as to other classes. Mages lost 1 2-drop, but like we already covered before, in the Karazhan meta, they have Medu's Valet and a huge offering bonus, so they're more than fine when it comes to 2-drops. What's interesting is that all the other classes that lost all these crappy cards, none of them were 2-drops, which makes sense because they're crappy cards, and a 2-drop is at least decent. So what's going to happen
is... Succubus for Warlock.
Okay, right. Which I'm gonna.
Which is something we'll talk about.
We'll talk about succubus. I'm gonna defend the freaking succubus. That's a bad removal, I think.
I think a lot of people agree.
Yeah. Okay, so succubus aside, which is at least the not often picked 2-drop, the offering rates of 2-drops for all these bad classes are going up, and they're going up significantly. I did the math, and I'm not gonna bore you with it, but on average per draft, you'll see almost 2 more 2-drops offered to you, just because of all these cards that have been removed. And the fact that the cards removed are not 2-drops, and so the 2-drops expand proportionally to fill in some of the gaps. And I only did it for 2-drops, but it's the same thing with 3-drops and 4-drops and all that, right? Like, it's just going to be easier to curve out. And that's so huge, because in this meta, it's really hard to curve out. Like, I think we've all seen that, right? Like, we raise 2-drops so much just to be like, hey, please take every one. Otherwise, you're just not going to have, like, the 5 you need. So that you'll get, like, a little bit more leeway with it once these changes come out. And that's especially important because a lot of these bad classes are like the classes most hurt by not having a 2-drop, right? Your priest, your hunter, your warrior, your warlock, your shaman. It's kind of shaman. They're all like very dependent on having like a 2-drop on turn 2. So you talk to people, they always recommend you take at least 6. And that's just not possible in this meta. You have to give up so much value to make that happen, just on average. And in many drafts, you just won't be able to do it at all. And then your class is kind of broken. And so I think one of the hidden changes that happened, it's going to have a huge impact in your drafting experience and in terms of what you see, is that decks will curve out better.
Yeah, I think so. This is something that they really tried to do. They wanted a more consistent and powerful feel to these sort of lesser played and not as powerful classes, right? Mm-hmm. They want you to be able to get these cards, like the powerful cards, more consistently and be able to have sort of a good experience or a better experience every single time. Yeah. So this is like all of these changes are it's a step in the right direction, but can we talk specifics? Are we going to talk specifics? When can we talk specifics?
Okay,
man?
We'll talk specifics next. I want to go over one more overall thing. And this is what I find really curious because it's against my initial reaction. If you look at my initial reaction, I made a post about it on the like Reddit thread of the announcement. I was like, yeah, rogues are hurt the most, and then warlocks and priests are helped the most. And I went back and I looked back on it. And I was like, wait, I'm wrong. Warlocks and priests weren't the 2 that were helped the most. In fact, really interestingly, I think, this is what I'm interested in, priests were not buffed all that much, comparatively to the other classes that were buffed. Only 4 common cards were removed for the priest. Compare that to 6 warrior cards. Compare that to 5 hunter cards, commons, I mean. And warlocks only had 3 removed. Like, you look down the warlock cards, and there's like a whole crap ton of cards removed, and they're all really bad, and I was like, oh yeah, it's so good they removed the really bad ones. But like, they're all rares and epics. In fact, a lot of them are epics. You have like your, Anima Golems and your like Reliquary Seekers and like Void Crushers. And your common ones, you really didn't have that many common cards that were removed, right? It's like Sacrificial Pact, Succubus, Sense Demons. So, actually, remember what we were saying, none of these cards are ever picked, right? Like, they're all so rarely picked. What matters is how many of them you remove, because you're never getting to that level anyway. And so, like, unlike at the top end, where these cards matter, right? Because you're actually picking these cards, because they affect what kind of deck you can make. These crappy cards that they're removing don't really have that effect, except, like, at the margins every, like, now and then. Instead, what effect they have is that they're not there, which goes to another point in terms of battles that I'll talk about later, which is that Blizzard's actually removing these cards by win rate, but these cards don't matter because of their win rate. When they're actually in your deck, it doesn't really have a lot to do with their win rate, right? Like, high synergy cards are useful and may have higher win rates than low synergy cards, even though low synergy cards are worse. They're just bad cards. You just need to remove X number of them to make the class better. But the win rates past a certain point don't really matter. Even though that's what, Blizzard has the tools to do that, and they're going with it. But it's just, I really hope they don't like take it as like, the book of truth. Like, oh, this is how good the card is. No, the win rate of a card has actually very little to do, I think, with how good the card is, because it always goes into a deck, and it is also always played by a player.
Yes, those are 2 very important filters, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're huge filters, right? Otherwise, it's not a game. Otherwise, why are you drafting? Why are you playing?
This is also why we say that some cards are going like some classes and then some cards. Like the rating would be very different. Like if we were to tell you, it's like if you want to just draft according to like say a 3-1 player, there are some cards that I just don't think you should take
Yep.
because you're probably going to use it wrong. And there are some cards that you really, really should take because they are very simplistic to use, right? And just real powerful.
Yep. Okay, well, we'll talk about that later when we go into like what Blizzard is doing, right, and how Blizzard is doing this. But for now, we're going into like we're focused on the practical part of this. This is the practical part of the discussion. What you should expect, how classes are going up, how they're going down. Okay, and I made a mistake. Warlocks actually have 4 commons, the same as priests, but still, hunters and warriors got more buffed. And I just wanted to point that out. I don't know what to make of it. I think it's because Blizzard's looking at this more like long term for some reason, even though this is a stopgap measure. I think they recognize. They even like said it, right? Like there's a whole bunch of classes. Like priest is the worst class. I think it's very clear from any stats anyone's ever heard from anywhere, and Blizzard knows this. But they're helping out hunter and warrior more. I think that's just that's very, very interesting. That they're choosing to do that, and they did it on purpose because they they went over this whole list. There had to have been discussions. They know the rarities, right? They're trying to solve this very specific problem of class imbalance, and so I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I'm not upset. I like that warriors getting buffed. I think warriors obviously. I think what it is they just go by hero power. They're just like, well, warriors have the worst hero power, so we give them the best cards. Right? Hunter has the second worst hero power, so we give them good cards too. Priest actually has a decent hero power. It just has crappy cards right now, but we'll get to it. Or maybe they're looking at it as, well, Priest already has Purify not in the meta. Purify should count as 3 cards right now, given the offering bonus, so they're actually buffed as much as the warrior. So whichever way, it's just something to keep in mind. The order is warrior gets the most, then hunter, then priest and warlock, then druid and shaman. And even druid and shaman have 3 commons removed each, which is huge compared to paladin, which has nothing removed.
Right.
I think
I think that's something that's really important. If you look at these cards, it's easy to just look at. It's like, oh, this will affect. For example, it's like, oh, they're taking away Dust Devil, they're taking away Totemic Light. We should really see is every time they take away a Dust Devil, it's a passive plus 2% whatever increase to Flame Tongue Totem, to Fire Elemental, to everything. So it's like if you look, there's this invisible parenthetical. It's increased offering bonus of all of these good cards by whatever percent.
And it includes neutral cards too. It's not just class cards. Definitely. Which comes to another effect that, again, there's nothing good or bad about it, just interesting. Paladins have a lot more class cards than these other classes.
They do. They also have a lot of really bad ones.
Yeah, right. But so you're just going to, if you draft a priest deck now, you're going to see less class cards. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Overall, it doesn't matter because cards are cards, right? And you're keeping, the ones that are in the meta are the good cards. They took away the ones that are bad cards, so it's not they're losing power, they're gaining power. That's why they did this. But it's just going to be interesting. Priests are going to feel less priesty. And paladins are going to feel just as paladin-y. So again, the soul of the priest has been made stronger, but has been made less effect. Just something to point out. I don't think there's anything inherently right or wrong about this, because a lot of the classes also the hero power and the really good cards disproportionately affect things compared to the really bad cards. Which again, this all works to the warriors' favor because warriors have a lot of really good cards. Really good cards. Just some things I wanted to point out for the people who are interested in this overall meta thing. Okay,
it's good. I mean, that's what we do. We dig deep. Oh, okay. Well, wait.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, are there any specific cards that they removed that you will miss? And we'll get into the survivors after this. This is going to be a really long Lightforge, and I think it deserves to be a really long Lightforge, right?
I think it deserves to be a really long Lightforge. And oh my gosh, I thought you'd never get to it. All right, I'm just going to go down the list, right? Let's talk about Shaman first.
Okay.
So, Shaman, taking away these cards, and I'll just give my initial impressions. And I think by looking at the cards that they took away for Shaman, you could really see the process, and you could really see how they arrived I believe, at their decision.
Okay, how did they arrive at their decision?
Okay, so the last card that they're taking away is Windspeaker, right? And I know. Like, let's get right to it.
The soul of the shaman.
Okay, I'm gonna ignore that comment. But if you're taking, excuse me, if you're taking away Windspeaker but leaving in Windfury,
yes, exactly.
I think that tells you like quite a bit about.
What does it tell me? Because I don't know. I'm confused. I didn't ask Blizzard, but I'm confused.
No. Here's the thing. Windspeaker is a harder card to use than Windfury. Here's what they're balancing for, and what they've said is they want to preserve the stories, right? Like Hearthstone has always been about stories. You know, you want to tell your friend about the epic matter bomber that you got.
Okay, but the Totemic Might, I think we can all agree, is the best story.
I mean, it's a good.
You remember
story,
that 12-win run we got with Totemic Might? Back in Classic.
And Auctioneer, I do remember.
Yeah, right? Like, it was like the best combo. The old Gadget and Auctioneer, for those who are wondering, not the nerfed version. It used to be one mana less.
This is like a year and a half ago.
Yeah. But it was such an epic, like, run, where it was like, oh god, we have to take a Totemic Might. Why? Because we have, like, a Manatide Totem and a Flame Tongue Totem, and, like, we have, regular Totem. And this is before they even had, like, the good, like, Totem Golems or, like, other Totem stuff. Like, Totems were, like, not a thing in Arena at all. And
they were not.
We picked it kind of like, well, I guess it's better than, like 1/2s or like.
All right, stop reminiscing. I'm going to stop you from reminiscing.
Oh, it was so good. We're not going to have those stories anymore. Totemic Might. Okay, go back to your story. Go back to your stories with your Windfuries.
Okay, so here's the thing. I think Windspeaker is a lot harder to use skillfully. So, they said that they've looked at the win rates of these cards, right? I'm not that surprised to see Windspeaker very low, because here are the conditions for something like Windfury, right? It's cheaper, which means you can combo it more often with a charger, like, let's say, even something like a Wolf Rider, right? Mm-hmm. It's cheaper. You need to sort of establish any sort of board in order to get a Windfury effect anyways. And between these two cards, I think if you want to preserve the story of Windfury, of just Burst, right? And I don't think you want to get rid of Windfury like as a mechanic for Shaman.
You definitely don't. This is the whole freeze thing all over again. Right. This is Snowchugger. Windspeaker is the Snowchugger of Shaman.
Right.
Which is also why Shaman's a lot worse than Mage.
If you want to preserve that, which Wizard definitely does, I think unfortunately you take out Windspeaker, adjusting for players' skill as well, because Windspeaker is a clunkier card.
It's not that much. I think it's the opposite. I think Windspeaker, at the end of the day, you can only play it and it's a 3/3. Windfury, you're like committed to the combo.
Right. No, you are. But here's the thing.
Oh, because Windspeaker creates a choice of when to just play it for nothing.
Exactly.
And Windfury, you don't have the choice.
That's the problem.
Right? But that's such a bad design way to do it.
It's
so bad. That's not even like.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I don't agree with that. But
I hope you're wrong.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen players like hold cards. For example, on turn 4, they'll be like, no, I'll just hero power. I don't want to play my 3/3, and a lot of times it's like, you got to play the 3/3, dude. Yeah. While you can't misplay with Windfury, right? So Windspeaker can actually cause some people to lose because it presents that choice that they can get wrong.
Oh my
Windfury can't. So that's kind of sad.
You can totally misplay Windfury. I don't know if you know Windfury. I know it's been a while since you actually looked at a Windfury, but you can give any minion Windfury. Not just your own minions. So you can definitely misplay this card.
You can as well. I'm not saying it is impossible, but...
On the other hand, Windspeaker is very clear about only giving a friendly minion Windfury.
I don't think this specific example of a mistake is one that most players are making. But... I will... anyways, let's go on. So I think this is an unfortunate side effect where, like, yes, you could tell Blizzard is looking at win rates, but they still want to preserve the fun factor, the stories that you're able to tell. And so
That was on my
Windspeaker is
list.
gone.
Like, this is like one of the top things on my list is why did you keep Windfury over Windspeaker? And I have no idea, because Windspeaker is definitely a better card. I can't imagine
It's
even
definitely a
that
better card,
Windfury's
yes.
win rate is higher than Windspeaker. I just can't imagine it. And Windspeaker is, like, it's just always been a better card. We've always thought it was a better card. It was a better card in Trump's list. It was a better card in our list. Like, it's always been a better card than Windfury.
Yeah. Look,
I can't, like, and I don't think that it's such a bad noob trap compared to Windfury. I don't think it's, like, so bad that you would kind of get rid, because you can't go around getting rid of all common cards that, like, you know, require skill to use. You can't do that.
You can't do that, but also look at all these cards. I think you kind of have to take away. You know, you have to take away something, and I think maybe they also want to
like,
take away.
okay, I get taking away Dust Devil.
Yeah,
That's a noob trap.
I just don't know what other card they would put in here.
Right. I think that's the thing, right? Like, I think they have like this, like, this list of like, we need X. You know, XR said that you definitely didn't need this. Like, they didn't have a quota or anything to meet, but they were trying to improve the Shaman. But I don't think I don't think Shaman's in a terrible place,
No,
and I don't think you need to take away Windspeaker. You could take away Windfury. Like, that's a better thing to take away. I think if you need to take away something, you can even keep both of them in. Although I never take Windfury. But it's just like, I don't know. I'm not fully convinced. I do think that your reasoning is a way to rationalize what Blizzard's doing, and could very well be true, because Blizzard obviously thought about it.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way they put Windspeaker up there, not Windfury, and didn't have some reasons for it. I'm not going to say they're good reasons, but there's got to be some reasons, and I think you provided the most likely reason for it. But I think that's not a good reason, because it's not, like, the idea is on the right path, but I think only for more extreme cases.
Right.
Like, you have, I don't know, like, you have Venture Co's in the game. How much more of a I lose the game because I play this card incorrectly card are you going to get? It's like a common neutral.
No. But Venture Code doesn't require like a board setup or anything. You know, it's still easier to play.
No, it's not easier to play, because you play it when you don't have the follow-ups for it, and you can't kill it off, and you lose the game. Windspeaker, at the most, you just, like, hold it for a little extra, you do other stuff. It's not anywhere near as much of a noob trap as Venture Co, I think.
No. Okay, but there's a big difference between these two. Like, at least Venture Co isn't conditioned. Like, it's not the end of a pathway, right? Windspeaker is potentially the end of a pathway. Like, you set something up on turn 1, turn 2, and turn 3, and because you set something up on turn 3, you're able to Windspeaker it on turn 4. Or, you know, like, you do all this stuff. Venture Co, it could lead you down a very bad pathway, and one that causes you to lose, but at least it could be the beginning of a pathway, right? It's not the end. So I think that's a big difference. And for beginner players, that is huge. That is everything. If you have a card that requires, like, you know, that has a huge benefit from you setting up and then using it, versus a card that you plop it down and then you have to play.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just disagreeing with you on the effect, like the degree of the effect.
Sure. But, you know, once again, that is a neutral card we're talking about.
Okay.
So they're not going to get rid of Venture Co. But I see the point that you're trying to make here. Yeah.
I just can't believe they took away the worst card of the two. Like, you have two cards, one's better, one's worse. Like, very clearly one's better and one's worse. And they took away the better card, not the worst card, in an effort to improve the Shaman.
I know.
And also the one with the higher skill and more interesting. Like,
pretty bad, man.
And it's cooler too. Like, he has lines, he says stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Windfury doesn't do anything.
Right.
I think the balance should weigh towards Windspeaker. But anyway, I'm gonna go on a rant now about Ancestral Healing.
All right, I'll tune you out.
Okay, so Ancestral Healing is a card. We were going to adjust it down because we've adjusted all 0 mana and 1 mana cards down a fair amount with the new Karazhan meta and the mage, like, dominance with everything. But before that, in anticipation of the meta, before we know how large the offering bonus is, Ancestral Healing is currently rated a 78 on our tier list. It wasn't rated that high. Yep. I moved it up to be super, super, super high. It used to be like a 48, I think. which is still high, right? Like, most people don't pick it that high. That's back when 2-drops were rated 2. Because we scaled up like a lot of 1-drops and 0-drops in anticipation of the meta being much faster. And that was fine until Mage set a bar, and then you needed to meet a particular time slot, which made the 0 mana and 1 mana cards all worse by degree. So the 0 mana cards are going down a lot more than the 1 mana cards, which is going down significantly too. Anyway, the point is, I put it that high just so people would use it, and I've always had a lot of success with this card. I think if I ever have this card, I take this card on the level of like almost like Yeti, and I want to take it more so, yeah, like more than that, because it's 0 mana, and it gives something taunt. That in and of itself is a card. Like, that's an okay card. Give a minion taunt 0 mana, because you always have big enough minions to like taunt up, right?
Right, and we actually see that in the game. Spare parts usually cost 1 mana more than what they're worth, right? So if you do a spare part -1, that is a legitimate card, essentially. And it's a legit card, like you said, that has an additional effect, which pretty good.
And the additional effect is heal your minion up to full. Like, what? That's a ridiculous effect. And it's a Shaman. You have a ton of big minions. You have your Fire Guard Destroyers, you have your Flame Wreath Faceless, you have your Fire Elementals, you have your Earth... Like, you just have big cards. That's part of the things that Shamans have. And now you can find a way to taunt up and heal it. And for the most part, Shaman can play very control-y when you have your Totem Shrines in the late game that they can't kind of break through. And so you want to taunt. Like, it fits so well with the Shaman's kit. No matter what you do with this, I think what they obviously did is they looked at Ancestral Healing. They saw that it has a low win rate, which I am not shocked at all, because it's pretty much like one of the definitions of a super pro card, right? Like, it doesn't add anything. You play it. It has 2 possible uses. They're kind of in contradiction to each other. You need to pick the right spot to play it. It's low on card advantage. You can play it literally every single turn, which gives you an extra option every single turn you have it in your hand. And that's bad, because it means you have to make more decisions for, like, you know, bad players. And so it's really sad to see it go. And it was also one of the few ways Shamans actually healed anything, which I liked, because Shamans should be able to heal things, and they just couldn't. And that's always been like a weird thing for me, that Shamans could not heal. Healing Wave helped a bit, but like Ancestral Healing was like your only real healing card. You have your Totem that heals, but nothing else heals. Like, I don't know. I thought it was one of the soul of the Shaman cards, but more so than that, I thought it was just a better card than I think Blizzard was going to give it credit for. And it's, again, part of the thing where Blizzard's just looking at what average players are doing with it. So your cool, good cards that require a lot of skill to use, they're going to be hurt by this process. And I don't think Shaman's in that bad of a place. I don't know why Shamans or Druids, for that matter, had to get, like, buffed. Okay. That's Shaman. Want to do Warlock?
Let's do Warlock. Okay. So, look, I understand on a lot of these cards. Succubus, what's going on?
Yeah.
Why? Like, why are you taking away Succubus? First of all, even if Malchezaar's Imp didn't come out, I'd still be like, all right, Succubus, what are you doing with it? Now that you're offering a bonus to Malchezaar's Imp, and then you're taking away Succubus, come on.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I think that's so wrong.
This is like such a soul of the Warlock card that no one ever uses. Because it's
Succubus.
like, yeah, you're tempoing out in return for discarding a card. Hello.
Discard, Demon, Temple, like, it...
2-drop.
Gosh.
Like,
yeah, it's a 2-drop. Oh, I don't...
obviously, like, again, this is the problem when you just look at stats, right? Like, every passing day I hate stats more and more, because people lean on it as a crutch to justify stuff, and it's objective, so they can do it. But it's about the interpretation of the stats. And when you're not interpreting it correctly, or you care more about how you look than about, like, the real stuff, then you just lean on stats. And it doesn't really make, like, things happen that don't make sense. Because stats show exactly what they show. It says your average player performs worse with a Succubus in the deck. That's correct. No one's challenging that. Removing Succubus will make Warlock better. That's correct too. No one's challenging that. but you gotta have other considerations in there.
Right.
And this is such a Soul of the Warlock card. This is not a high skill card, by the way. This is not the argument for like ancestral healing or whatever.
No.
This is like, well, we just really like the card, I think, and you could make enough. And I really like discard synergies, even though they're not a thing. So it's something that you want to keep in, and you want to like. One of the good parts about Arena, right, is that you're forced to take bad cards.
Right, you're forced to take bad cards. Like one of the problems with stats is you get players who. Like, who are the people picking Succubus? A lot of them could just be players who are worse players. Yeah, just bad players. So,
or they're people who are, like, trying to go for a cool deck, and it'll fail more often than it succeeds. Right. But you got to allow for that.
Right, you have to allow for that, and you have to also allow for the times in which you have a Hafu or a Shady Bunny look at their deck and be like, Succubus is just the right choice.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You know, and they are 100% accurate, and they will pile the deck.
That's a really cool thing to happen in a draft.
Right,
and you have things in which, like, you know, Anima Golem's never the right pick.
It's Anima Golem. Let's get it right. Anima Golem.
Anima Golem is never the right pick, so you can get rid of it. Like, Sense Demons may sometimes be the right pick, but I'm not even too mad about it. But like that's a mid-range kind of like consideration. Curse of Rafam is never the right pick. You know, Void Crusher is like worse than a Core Hound usually, right? Like, yeah, it's sometimes the right pick, but it's so few, and there's so many other cards that fill in the same gap that it fills.
Yeah,
like Reliquary Seeker. It's essentially a 1/1. It has a little bit of a bonus. It's not going to be missed. But Succubus is such a soul. It's a card that people actually pick when their deck goes a certain way. And it's a good card when their deck goes a certain way. And it's not just because of the discard synergies. We're talking about like times when there weren't really discard synergies. Just when you need that 2-drop.
Yeah. This thing with the Succubus, I don't agree with it, but look. It's definitely going to improve Warlock, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, these changes will improve the class.
Yeah.
If it failed in doing that, then we got a problem. But
well, we'll go into where it's going to fail to do that.
Oh, that's true.
Okay, so that's Warlock. Overall, I'm fine with it, right? Like Sacrificial Pact, you don't want that card in the arena, right? Like that's but Succubus. So we're gonna miss Succubus. We're gonna miss like most of what they got rid of for Shaman. Let's go to Druid. What are you gonna miss for Druid? Savagery, Poison Seed, Soul of the Forest, Mark of Nature, Tree of Life, Astral Communion.
Wrong. They got Druid so wrong.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I don't agree with...
I guess I don't care as much. I don't have as much of an objection with Druid. What do you hate about Druid? In terms of getting the Druid?
I disagree with like 3 of the common cards that they got
There's only 3 common cards that they got rid of. So you
Yeah,
disagree with literally every common card they got rid of.
Poison Seeds, Soul of the Forest.
Why Poison Seeds? I hate Poison Seeds. Why, it's like a weird thing that's not even that flavorful for the Druid. Why is it even in the game?
Flavorful. It's another removal. Like these are cards in which I think.
But why? Why do you need these kinds of removals? Right? Yeah. Poison Seeds is a skill card, but it's like really bad.
No, it's a bad one. But once again, we're going to that sort of...
Yeah, but like, Succubus is flavorful. Windspeaker is flavorful. They're Soul of the Heroes. Poison Seeds has nothing to do with the Soul of the Druid.
No. It's not to the extent of
the
Succubus.
Druid card removes and then gives you back a card. That's what the Druids do. Poison Seeds doesn't do that.
No. But I think Poison Seed is one of those cards that, requires skill. It has a place in certain decks, right?
Yeah. And I do agree that it has the same skill thing as like like an Ancestral Healing. It's just way worse.
Yeah. So like Poison Seeds, I just think it's like I'm not going to compare it to the arguments that we have for Succubus because I think Succubus is
different.
Yeah, you're right. So I think I don't necessarily agree with Poison Seeds, but I can see because you do have to get rid of some cards, right? I'm like, okay, at the end of the day, maybe.
Yeah.
Soul of the Forest, I actually like that card.
Oh, I like that card too. I think it's better than people give it credit for. We were actually about to like significantly raise it in the tier list. Did we already raise it? Maybe we already raised it, but I was about to like raise it more because it was actually like a really it was worthwhile. It's a 50. It's a 50 right now. Okay, maybe we wouldn't have raised it much more.
Soul of the Forest, I don't think it's right. It's not a terrible card, but once again, it is even more of a setup card than Windspeaker by far, right? You really need to like look at your deck. It's like, all right, I got the Imp Masters, I got the Harvest Golems, I have like this, I have that. I can, really sort of tempo out and solve the forest to get ahead, go face and win.
Exactly.
It's a hard card to use.
It's a hard card to use. You can use it in many ways, right? You do it,
Right.
and then you trade a minion, you get your 2/2 immediately for the tempo, or you prevent yourself from being flame striked off the board. There's just so many like things to do with it. It's a win more card, but it's you start needing win more cards more and more as the meta gets more complicated.
Yeah, and win more cards are like let's try to check off of the box. Are they fun? Yes. They definitely sort of create that story. Right?
Yep.
Like, oh man, I had like 7 minions on the board, and then I solved the forest right before Flame Strike, and then the mage just like conceded.
Yes.
Right? That's a cool like story. That's something that people will be like, oh man, I had like, I'll remember that for a long time.
Yeah.
So, and it's also something that just like
it's fun.
It's fun.
I like having a deck with a Soul of the Forest, even if it's not the best card, and it's not the worst card. It's not like so bad that like yes, I do kind of have fun if I have a Sacrificial Pact in my deck. But like it's so bad. Like there's degrees of badness, and so the forest is like barely bad. It's like Dragonling Mechanic bad, but like way more fun.
Here and then, oh my gosh, Mark of Nature.
I get Mark of Nature. I get Mark of Nature. Okay, so can we all admit first that it's a bad card?
What, Mark of Nature?
Yeah, it's a bad card.
Well, no, I mean it's not a terrible card.
It's not a terrible card. It's the same badness as like Soul of the Forest.
Yeah. It's bad in that you like between 3 picks, you're probably not picking that one.
Yeah, we have it rated about the same as Soul of the Forest.
Right. But so here's the thing, like with Mark of Nature, right? It does druidy stuff. It taunts up.
Yes, that's exactly why I don't like removing it. It's choose 1, it taunts. Druid doesn't even taunt anymore.
Choose 1, it taunts.
It buffs.
Right, it buffs, it's flexible, it takes some skill to use. But here's the thing, like looking at Druid more carefully, I'm just like, man, they really had a tough time with Druid. Like I could see how they reached the finished result because Druids, the problem with them isn't like, oh, they have these 3 cards that are just terrible.
It's not even that they have a terrible like hero power. They have a good, like a medium to good hero power. They have good-ish cards.
If anything, their weakness right now is just like they're too average.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
this is like
average.
This is a bad tool for fixing the Druid. This whole like removing cards thing.
It is. It really is. Yeah.
But like you also don't need to fix the Druid. I was about to put Druid as the 3rd best class in this meta. So one more thing about Blizzard and stats is that Blizzard, they have some stats, but they've obviously made these decisions not because of the stats they gathered since September 1st when Karazhan came out, Like, these are stats from the OG meta. They've been, like, you're a big company. These patches don't come out literally in 4 days. They were, like, these changes were, like, on the tables approved by people, and they got the sign-off in these couple days, right? The stats they're using for behind these right now, they are, like, OG stats. They are not applicable in this meta. But they're using it because it's all they got. Again, they're going to fall back on, like, oh, objective, oh, whatever. But, like, it's just, again, stats show exactly what they show. And when you're not looking at it critically, I think people... Like, it's just so easy to fall back on. It's just so easy to fall back on. And people don't question it because they like having facts. And stats are a fact. They're not concerned with the interpretations. Because every time you make an interpretation, that's not just like, this is correct. This is the end-all and be-all of all things. I will add an asterisk caveat to it, like the way if you like run a scientific experiment, you have a whole bunch of like results, and then you have to make a conclusion, right? And your conclusion is like blah blah blah, and then assumed. What's assumed? Occam's razor. You don't even have to write it. Everyone knows you're assuming Occam's razor, but like that's a really random thing to assume. Yeah, I'm getting off topic here, but it's kind of the same thing in that like every time you try to not do that, you're putting yourself out there, and you have to make a defense, and it's just so much easier to not do that. And the bigger the thing you're doing, like the first arena changes in forever, the less you're willing to do something like too out of the way. And probably more so if you are like questioning your own like expertise in the area. Like I think over the past couple weeks, a lot of people have been questioning Blizzard's competence in terms of whether they know about how to balance the arena. So I think that's also contributing to them just going with very conservative like stats. Like looking at the response of the Blizzard balancing team member Ixar in the thread of the announcement, like literally 90% of his posts is we looked at stats and did this. We looked at the stats say this. The stats.
Yep.
It's just the stats say it, but like you gotta do better than that, right? Like at the end of the day, you gotta like maybe you're just not saying it, but like it's such a cop out if you're trying to do something like actually like on the level that I guess I would really prefer that the game be handled, because the stats leave so many people out, right? Like the stats leave as many people out as they serve. And you gotta know what the stats are actually saying. So one of the things that I could very well see is like some of these stats are probably like either outdated or they're going to change or they're being overinterpreted. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. Mark of Nature is one of those things where yes, I understand the stats on this is not that great. I understand that there is going to be a problem removing cards from Druid, right? Like that's the key thing with Druid. You can't just remove bad cards and have the class be okay. It's the wrong tool and you don't have the right tools for it. But like maybe the better thing here to do is just to not do it.
I think so.
Like just keep it as slightly underpowered compared to where you would like it.
Yeah, it's really tough. Like I think the problem is like this solution is okay for like so many classes, and then just like the Druid really just exposes where it goes wrong. But
and also, I think people are just randomly bad at Druid. Like I'm sure they're looking at average win rates, and the average win rates for Druid has always been way below what we expect. And so many good arena players, like from Trump onward, right, like have Druid as one of their best classes because it's so fundamentals based.
It's fundamental. So, like, I think the problem really is the hero power being really bad in the late game.
Yeah.
Terrible in the late game, even though it's a mid to late game class a lot of the times. So,
and the cards are so normal, and there's so many choosy kind of things where like you do have to make the right choice, play them at the right time, hold them at the whatever, and then you eke out these little advantages that build up, right? Like we're going back to like the old school Trump play style, and that's what you do. But if you're like a little shaky on fundamentals, if you're like not a pro at like being able to read 3 turns ahead and plan your whole entire thing, the class is going to suffer from it. And so it's one of the like, I don't even think it has a high skill floor or whatever, but it definitely has a pretty high skill ceiling, interestingly, even though it's the most balanced class. And so you're looking at average stats, I'm sure they're like, well, Druids need a hand. Druids don't need a hand. Hearthstone players need a hand. And they will eventually get better when they play this game, and then they will be better at Druid at some point. I just, like, I'm okay if they didn't do anything with Druid. If they did stuff, I'm okay with Poison Seeds, definitely. Sort of okay with Soul of the Forest. Like, I think that's kind of a toss-up. Like the way I've, like, Forgotten Torch, right? It's kind of like a toss-up.
Right.
Mark of Nature, though, you should keep that. Like, that's on Succubus levels of, you should just keep that card even if it's bad.
You should, but I guess they wanted to...
Like, class balance on that micro level, like, to increase your class win rate by, like, 0.05% is not worth losing the card. That's where I'm coming out on it, like, for the average player. Especially when this is like a number 3 class already for good players. Or, like, number 4, or, like, number 5, right? It doesn't need help.
Alright, let's move on to Warrior.
Okay.
You want to take this one first?
Yeah, I always want to take the Warrior. Warsong Commander, Bolster, Charge, Bouncing Blade, Axe Flinger, Rampage, Ogre, Wormaul. So take Warsong Commander, set that aside, and Bouncing Blade, but that's like not a common card. So you take the other 6. Again, 6 common cards in here, which means that this is the class that's going to be most buffed. Warsong Commander should definitely leave. They like nerfed the card to be so stupid, right? Like I was really mad when they nerfed the card, so I'm glad they're just getting rid of it altogether from the arena. Much better. Bolster, Charge, Axe Flinger, Rampage, Ogre, Wormaul. They are all cards we take.
I think we've gotten 12 with like all these cards.
We've gotten 12 with all these cards, definitely, because they're all totally usable, even Bolster. I know some people, and we like, shit on Bolster too, but in certain decks, meaning if you have a lot of taunts and your other options aren't great, Bolster can be pretty good, even if it's just a 2/2 buff, in the sense of it's not total trash. And if you get 2 taunts, right, it's actually really good. So we've done it with all these cards, and they're all bad. There's no like argument that any of these cards are even average. They're all definitely bad, but they're all also like flavorful in their own way for the Warrior.
I know, and you could tell what they're trying to do with the Warrior. They're like, okay, you're gonna get your weapons, like good weapons, right? Now you're gonna get your weapons, you're gonna get your cleaves, and Warrior is gonna play very similarly. Like you're gonna have your executes. And Warrior is gonna be pretty freaking strong.
It is.
It's gonna be really strong because of all of these common changes.
But like, think about what the Warrior is weapons-wise. You still have Fool's Bane offering bonus. You're gonna be so freaking over-weaponed now. Like, we were talking about, like, you may get like 0.15 more flame strikes per game or whatever. That's because it's one card. If you are looking at Arcanite Reaper, War Axe, Arathi, Death's Bite, and then you throw in some of the, well, I guess the rare ones aren't really going up because it's all common cards, but that's 4 cards. That means you're gonna get like, what, I don't know, like 1 more weapon. You know, to throw an upgrade in there, throw in Azatha's First Mate, you're gonna get 1 more weapon offered per draft. And you are already being offered more weapons than you can handle with the offering bonus to Fool's Bane.
No. Now that there's also an offering bonus to Violent Illusionist, you can handle all the weapons you need, man. But like, I'll say this, for this meta, I think because of the bonus to Violent Illusionist, Warrior will just, it'll work, right? It'll work in many ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I agree with that. The Warrior is going to become very strong. And I think that's kind of the point. They're very much on the and look at it this way. I'm looking at this, and so far, like, of the classes that we've gone over, besides Wind Fury, which I would have gotten rid of, I would have also gotten rid of Demon Fuse for Warlock. Just going back a little to the Warlock, I don't know why Demon Fuse is still in the game.
I have no idea.
It's a common card that buffs only demons, otherwise it's unplayable. It's in a class where you're getting rid of, like, bad cards for, and it somehow, like, didn't get removed. Like, I think they just, like, didn't look at the card. Because there's no way you look at the card and you're like, yes, we get rid of Succubus instead of Demon Fuse, right? Like, there's no way anyone can think that. That is just a mistake. And I hope they fix it and bring Succubus back, but they're not going to. They're just going to get rid of Demon Fuse too, which is fine. I don't want Demon Fuse there. But so those are the only cards that I would have, like, actively removed, and then I'm really confused why they didn't remove, if they're going to remove cards at all. But in the Warrior, there's nothing like that. Like, Warriors do not have total trash cards.
No, they just have a lot of pretty bad and conditional cards,
highly conditional cards that can all work in a certain deck, but you need a certain deck. And if you want to improve the Warrior and the only tool you have is to remove cards, I don't know what else you could have done. These would have been my picks too, to remove, if you told me I had to remove X number of cards from the Warrior.
Yeah.
And
like,
I would have been really sad.
Looked at, right, you could have asked me, excuse me, like, would you want to remove Axe Flare? I'm like, no, of course not. I remember a time in which, and I could have said it for him. I was like, oh man, Rampage was so good for me during a run. I'm like, oh, Charge, remember that time we, like, put Charge in.
Oh my god, Charge is such a winning card.
I know.
Such a game-winning card.
But yeah, like, it's just pretty tough, and I can see it. Blizzard is just like, okay, they have too many conditional cards. Let's get rid of all of them, because you're gonna have games in which you have, like, a Charge and an Ogre Warmaw and, like, a Cleave and an Inner Rage in your hand, and you're just like, what do I do with this, right? So
I hope Blizzard brings all these cards back at a lowering offering rate when they get this bonus in.
They're never going to. It's the most inelegant solution to take away cards and put them back in and force people to remember when it's in the game.
No, I don't think they should repeatedly adjust it. I think it should be a one-time thing where when they get the new system in, I think they can do it as a one-time thing, where they will never put a card back, but because they're coming up, because it'll come with a whole change of the arena, with a whole new system of how they balance the arena, right? Like, everything will be different. And so it'll be like, and this is going to happen really, really hardcore with Hunter, but like in Warrior, right? You're like, oh, Ogre Warmaw, it's offered at half the rate it normally is, right? Or like a quarter of the rate, whatever. Just like keep it in the game. But yeah, no, like I understand what Blizzard did here. Warrior's going to be really good.
Sure.
And I wouldn't have done it any differently for Warrior, which is not something I could have said for any of the other ones we've gone through. So Warrior is the one that they got right, I think, if this is the way they're going to go down on it.
I think so. But why did they get rid of Bouncing Blade?
Oh, I really hate that card, so I didn't even think twice about it.
No, but I think it's a legit card. I think it checks off all of the boxes in terms of cards that they should like. I don't understand, and it's an epic card, right? So I don't think they feel the need to get. I really don't understand Bouncing Blade. I really do not, because I think it's a skillful card that's not that bad, right? Especially if there's only one thing on the board. I mean, it's just a hard removal if there's just one thing on the board.
Yeah, but you're the Warrior. How often is there only one thing on the opponent's board and you're still not dead?
Still. Or you could just use it as they have a Borderfist Ogre, you have a 3/3. You're like, well, all right, I guess I bop it in and I treat it as a Shadow Bolt, right? Which is still pretty good. And if anything, it creates amazing stories, right?
Maybe
it creates great stories.
You never use it to create stories.
Well, no, but sometimes you have to. Right.
Yeah, I think this is one of those cards where Blizzard looked at it and they're like, this card really just isn't working as intended, period. We just don't like this card. I understand functionally in the arena, it functions as a hard removal, which is how you use it. But, its intended purpose is to be this fun, almost what's that Warlock card that deals, 10 damage to a whole bunch of crap?
Spreading...
Yeah. It's almost supposed to be a spreading madness kind of deal, and no one uses it that way because it's not the way to use it. I think it's just a very poorly designed card from a usage perspective. And so they looked at it and they're like, look, we don't like the card. It's an epic. It'll make the Warriors a little bit better. Some of the very class-defining cards we don't see a lot in the arena as much as we want to, like Brawl and Gorehowl. And this will just be a way to do that. And we want Tentacle for Arms to be in because that's Explorer's Hat and whatever, right? It's a thing that you repeatedly use, even if it's not that good. It's a hero power addition, right? It's a cool thing to do. We want Blood Warriors in because it kind of adds a little to the whole dilution of that common card, Battle Rage. And so Bouncing Blade is the RNG madness that no one uses as RNG madness, and it has a tear. I can imagine this card having the worst win rate because noobs will pick it thinking it's good. And people who want to have fun will pick it. And people who want to have fun generally don't win a lot.
I just think it's a decent card, period.
Anyway. I think it's a decent card when you use it correctly. And by decent, I mean bad. Just not, fully awful. But it's going to be used incorrectly so often. And so Blizzard's going to look at their stats and it's going to be awful. And they're going to want to get rid of, noob traps and things like that. I think ultimately that's why Succubus is gone. It was a noob trap. You look at Succubus at the very beginning, you're like, this is such a good card. I can get cards anytime I want. I have a hero power that does that. Why would I not want to tempo out more? This is a tempo class. You're supposed to just hold the board, right? That's what everyone tells me. Yes, Succubus. I think that's ultimately why Succubus is out right now.
Yeah, I see. All right.
Okay. Now the big one. I think this is the biggest one. I freaking, if there's one part that I think, I will swallow the Shaman changes, even though I don't think they're necessary. I will swallow the Druid changes, even though they weren't necessary. The Warlock changes are mostly on point. Succubus and Demon Fuse, oddity aside. Warriors, I give it an A+. Hunter, I can't. I really don't like what they've done. So this is what Hunters.
I love so many of these cards, man.
Starving Buzzard, Call Pet, Timber Wolf, Cobra Shot, Lock and Load, Dart Trap, and Snipe.
All right. Okay. I'm going to start just because I played so much Hunter in the previous few weeks because chat kind of forced me to play Hunter.
Yeah, chat's been forcing me to play Hunter too.
Moving onwards. Starving Buzzard, I think absolutely fine, right?
Yeah. They nerfed it to hell. It's just not a card anymore.
Right. Even if you're able to draw, I'm just like, geez, you're playing a 5 mana 3/2. Yeah. That's absolutely terrible. Getting rid of Call Pet, absolutely fine.
Yeah, right? Whatever. It's adding nothing. It wasn't a horrible card because you just drew a card and you had a decent chance it was actually going to be a beast.
Right. Okay. Now let's go for the appetizer here in terms of criticisms. I like Timberwolf.
I hate Timberwolf. I'm glad it's
gone. I like Timberwolf. I think in an aggressive style in which you just need 1-drops and this actually has an effect, right? So if you have beasts, it could actually have initiative. I'm not going to draft Timberwolf over a lot of cards, but I've drafted Timberwolf quite a few times in
I've
in
taken
my
it a few
drafts.
times too. It's not as bad
And
as Blizzard thinks, because
it
obviously the
fits-
stats are going to be skewed to like people who like think it's the best card ever, because it's a beast that buffs beasts, and you're a beast class, so clearly it's the best card.
Right. And like Timberwolf, I think just fits in the way
Yeah,
that
I mean it's Unleash the Hounds.
hunters. Right. It fits in the way that hunters play.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know, for example, why they got rid of Timberwolf but kept in something like Bestial Wrath, right?
Well, Timberwolf is common, Bestial Wrath is epic.
Okay, no, mind. Okay, that was a bad example.
That's also why they kept him Feigned Death.
Yeah. But basically, having said that, like I like
Like,
Timberwolf.
would you take with Brave Archer or Fiery Bat and keep Timberwolf?
No.
Yeah, like that's ultimately I think where we're at.
Right, but why are we getting rid of a 1-drop period? Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the question. This is what this is my big thing. Would you get rid of Scavenging Hyena for Timberwolf? That's the other bad beast. That's a noob trap that synergizes with beasts.
I wouldn't, just because it's too much a part of the hunter sort of like Scavenging Hyena is so. I guess it checks off those boxes I was telling you about, right?
Yeah.
It's
So does
beast.
Timberwolf, though.
It does all of this stuff. Yeah, I know, but I think that like Scavenging Hyena, because it has like setup potential, it has Unleash the Hound potential. Yeah.
Okay.
It makes me sad though, because I really do like Timberwolf.
Scavenging Hyena is on my list of cards I want them to actually get rid of, because it's kind of a like I'm okay with it keeping there. I think it's a coin flip, and it went the other way. I think they were probably literally like down between Timberwolf and Scavenging Hyena, and they're like,
Yeah.
we're gonna keep the Hyena over the Timberwolf. And you understand that, like, this is one of the things where you don't make this argument for Druid and Shaman, but like hunters need help. Right?
Yeah,
I don't think
they
anyone
definitely
argues with that. It's like warrior style, right? Like, yes, we like all these warrior cards they're getting rid of, but they need to get rid of stuff. So you're at the hunter, you're looking, what do you get rid of, right? You don't have stuff. There's not that many awful hunter cards. So they had to you have to do something. They don't again, they don't have the right tool for this.
Yeah, that's true.
Like hunters have a whole bunch of like 60s rated card, right? Like I'm looking at it right now. There's a whole glut of them. It's the same as Druid, just like worse.
All right. Now we next move on to Cobra Shot, aka Shady Bunny's favorite card. I know he was incredibly sad by this. And Cobra Shot,
I'm pretty sad by it too. I'm like getting more and more into Cobra Shot with each draft I do, because it does what you need it to do.
So here's the thing about, and I think that when I draft Hunter and when Shady drafts Hunter, like we believe that the class sort of has to go aggressive, right? You are.
I go both ways. So when I'm making an aggressive deck, I take Cobra Shots because they do what you need it to do. Like if my deck skews aggressive, I will take the Cobra Shot. It's a totally pickable card. We have it at a 46 right now.
It's a totally pickable card, and I think it just plays into the way the Hunter wants to play, right?
Yep.
So it really sucks when you're taking away a card that might be quote bad, but it does help like a certain class play the only way that it can play in order to win. So
Yep. No, I mean I agree. It's one of those things where I see why it's taken away, but like I would take it away too, just because you need to take away cards, and there are no other cards to take away. One thing I want to bring up before we exit minions altogether is Camel. I would want Camel gone. I would take Timberwolf. I would take Cobra Shot. I would take both of those to stay in the game over the Camel. And this is after we had a pretty epic like triple Camel, whatever deck that we actually like made work, right? Where we had like top quality 1-drops, and then we had a whole bunch of Camels, and we had a whole bunch of beast synergies, and it all kind of worked out. And it was really fun. And so it is a story card, but it's kind of not what the Hunter does, and the other things are so much what the Hunter does.
Right. No, I agree. I think even though I've had some good experiences with Camel as well, and it is a skillful card, right?
Yeah, like, it's definitely it's a drafting skill card.
Right, it's a drafting skill card, but I agree. It doesn't have the feel of a Hunter.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're almost like going like, okay, I'm gonna do something very weird and different now, and that's
like, kind of why it creates good stories.
Yeah,
like
Yeah.
Look at what I drew out of my deck as a hunter.
Right. But they've definitely went away from that direction with the whole warrior thing when push came to shove with removing cards. They got rid of like a whole lot of warrior story cards.
They did.
A whole lot of them.
But that's the problem. Warrior was filled with all these story cards, but at the end of the day, story cards aren't really what get you consistently over 7 wins. Like Faceless Summoners are.
Yeah.
And Faceless Summoners don't. Well, okay, you know, you can have the stories like, my gosh, they got 2 Injured Blade Masters in a row.
Yeah.
That could be a story, but you know that's not.
Yeah.
That's not really what Blizzard's going.
Yeah, but like I think this is the weird difference in philosophy here. Where when push came to shove, right? For warrior, you got rid of all the story cards. For the hunter, you kept in the Desert Camel, which is not that great. It's RNG, and you got rid of like Cobra Shot, Timberwolf, and Cobra Shot is late, but Timberwolf was like an original card. It was like a classic. It may even be a basic card. It was like so fundamental to hunters.
Yeah. You know, they try not to touch the classic set.
Yeah. So I don't know about that. Like Scavenging Hyena, I thought was a coin flip. Desert Camel, I thought will lose the coin flip, and Cobra Shot or Timberwolf will make it in.
Yeah.
But there's that. We could leave Lock and Load. I don't really care about that card. I don't think anyone's gonna miss it in. It's an epic.
Sense. Yep.
So now we get to our card good bad. Card good bad for today, where we tell you whether a card is good or bad. Snipe. What do you think, Merps? Snipe. Good card, bad card?
Snipe by itself, okay card. When I get a free Snipe, it's pretty freaking great, right?
It is an amazing card when you get it for free.
When I get a free Snipe, and you know what gives a free Snipe? Oh, you know, just this 3 mana 3/4 that has a crazy offering bonus right now, and you're probably gonna see
and,
like
Mad Scientist too, just like to buff the offering rates.
This is the thing that's really, I think is really unfortunate, right? And they must have thought about it, but I think it's still really unfortunate.
I'm like half skeptical that they thought about it because I like wrote about it and and then I got a response and it was like Snipe performs really poorly in statistical our statistical database.
Right.
Statistics stats Snipe bad, and because when decks have Snipe they are bad, we needed to take away some cards, and so Snipe had to go. And then my instant reaction was, that's not why you get rid of Snipe. Like, first of all, you don't have the offering bonus data, so you can't even say stats. That's just not. There's no way you're looking at the data when you're making this decision. We went over the timeline, so that's just like a lie. Well, he didn't say it, right? But like, if it was reverse, he's like justifying the action after the fact.
Right.
The decision was made. And then he may have stats to back it up. Maybe it doesn't matter.
Right, and guys, specifically what we're talking about is the increased offering bonus to Cloaked Huntress, which allows you to play these for free.
Yeah.
Right.
And two, Snipe is like a very difficult card to play. I can see people thinking, I can see people drafting it incorrectly. I can see people playing it incorrectly, especially drafting, because this is a card that you draft when you have a high synergy deck, and it's really good when you have a high synergy deck. It's 54 on our tier list. It's pickable. With a lot because of the synergy. And even more than that, Snipe is the only card for the hunter that triggers on playing a minion.
Right, exactly.
So now, cards that you actually do pick that are actually good, like Freezing Trap especially, but also Explosive Trap to like some extent, and Snake Traps and all that, they're all worse now. Tempo-wise. You've reduced the tempo of some of like the top hunter class cards. Like, there's just so many things wrong with getting rid of Snipe in a meta.
Some secrets are so sort of not like meta changing, but they will change the effect of a game.
Yeah.
Right? Like Snipe is one of those cards. Another one that I think a perfect example of another secret that's also quote bad is Vaporize.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Vaporize is a really bad one, but a lot of times I'm just like, I don't know if I can take this risk.
Right. Exactly.
But at the same time, I'm like, shoot, if I don't go face with like my Boulder Fist Ogre, I don't know if I get lethal.
Yep.
And then you're put in this situation where like, oh my gosh, the threat of Vaporize has such a big effect on this game. The threat of Snipe, I think is a little bit less so, but
it's still an effect on the game.
Right. It has a huge impact.
It's free bonus to Hunter that you're just getting rid of. The thing is, with these cards, remember what we were talking about, right? These cards aren't bad because you would pick them and then they would be bad. When Blizzard looks at statistics, they're looking at if you would pick them, they would be bad. So they're looking at the incorrect statistics to be looking at. What you're looking at is which cards can I safely remove from the meta without affecting things. And Snipe is it's like almost the worst card to remove. Like, of any card within like a 10, maybe even 15 point range, it is by far the worst card to remove. Because its implications is on high synergy decks where it is amazing. And it is on cards that you would actually take where you would never even take the Snipe and would have the effect. So we're saying, how do these classes get buffed? It's not because, I would have taken a Snipe and now I get like, I don't know, like a 4/4 or something that I would rather have.
Right.
It's, I would have taken... and instead, it's that, now that I'm not getting a Snipe, I'm seeing all these other cards. I have more of a chance of getting my Freezing Traps, my Explosive Traps, my good cards, right? My Glaive Zukas. Well, this is not a card where that's its only function. This is a card where it's actively making your other cards better by not being in your deck, by never picking it, by never doing anything. You can't get rid of this from the offering pool without having severe effects. And just the response was stats, which is so missing the point that it is.
Yeah, I don't
the win rate for Snipe could be like 1%, and it would still be a bad idea to get rid of Snipe.
Right. I don't agree with it. I don't know.
This is, I think, by far the worst decision out of this whole entire bunch by like such a long mile. Because it's breaking the paradigm of like how they're removing cards. You remove other cards, we're like, it's flavor, right? Like, we would like to see this card. We have a lot of flavor arguments. We have a lot of like, we like this card. There's a lot of like, this card isn't bad. Here, it's, you don't even have to pick this card for it to be good. Like, that's how good this card is.
Yeah, the threat of, secrets are, the only reason secrets have some power to them, even though a lot of them are really weak, is because they all synergize with each other, right? Mm-hmm. They all support each other. So, like, if there was only one secret per class, which would be ironic because it would not be very secretive, but the power level would decrease exponentially, right? It would just really be really bad. So by taking away a secret, and one of the only secrets that sort of covers, if you look at all these pillars, some secrets prop up the same thing, right? Or they do the same thing. But Snipe, because it does something different, it just makes everyone more powerful. And this is...
And it itself is not that bad.
By itself, it's not bad either, yeah.
It's not like, we haven't played with this card. It's Snipe. It's been there since Classic. We've been using this card forever. I know exactly how good Snipe is.
And for this, look, getting rid of Dart Trap, I understand.
I'm even against getting rid of Dart Trap.
No, but I don't love it. But
it's triggered on a hero power. It prevents you from using your hero power. You have to think twice about it.
Sure. Right. No, you have to think twice about it. But I understand Dart Trap to some extent. If you have to get rid of a secret. But getting rid of 2 secrets already is like, whoa, that's huge. And having Snipe be one of them, I'm just like, I don't agree with that.
Despite the fact that you will get better cards in your deck, I think not having Snipe and Dart Trap in the offering pool is actively worse for the Hunter than keeping them in. It is definitely worse for the Hunter than getting rid of Camel and Scavenging Hyena in their place. Definitely.
Yeah, with the offering bonus in here, I'm just like, man, I think they missed a real opportunity to have these sort of quote bad cards be pretty good.
Yeah,
we'll see.
So and it kind of makes sense. If you think about people at Blizzard and what they're playing, I have a feeling they're probably not playing Hunter in the arena all that much. I have a feeling they're probably not playing Warrior in the arena all that much until we made them. I have a feeling they're not playing Priest in the arena. I have a feeling they're mostly playing Rogues and Mages and Paladins. And it shows in these things. Because this is just, it's kind of like it's one of those, what were you thinking kind of things, which kind of proves that you weren't thinking, or to the extent that you were thinking, you were prioritizing really incorrectly when you're doing this. And sometimes it works, right? With the Warrior, we kind of got to the point where it worked. Warlock was pretty good. Shaman had some misses or whatever, but if they really needed to increase the class power, there's not much you can pick out. Like, there's not that many things you can replace it with.
Right.
Druid, you don't have the tools for. There's no excuse for Hunter. You have like
No,
willing
there
and
isn't.
waiting cards to get rid of. And again, the solution is always just to keep the classes a little bit worse, right? Like, you're already helping. You are already getting rid of Starving Buzzard. You are already getting rid of, like, whole bunches of other stuff.
Yep. Oh, right. Wow. So we have one more class.
We have one more class, which is the Priest. And we'll get into the Priest. We're about to play a Priest run after this, by the way. This 2-hour Lightforge podcast. And we'll go to class talk with the Priest. But before that, let's do a question from the GOAT. Just because this is the last topic afterwards.
It really is. So question from the GOAT this week. We've been talking so much about these cards that are being taken away, right? My question from the GOAT is, what card, like, you don't have to name one for every class, or you can actually name a class for the Paladin if you would like. What class would you want being, quote, like, Priest of the Feasted, like, to get an actual bonus? Right?
Oh,
So
you
we're
want a
not taking
card to
away
get
now.
Priest of the Beast. Oh, Priest of the
Exactly.
Feast.
Priest
Interesting.
of the Feasted. Yeah.
Interesting.
So if you guys don't know what that means, because they took away Purify, Priest of the Feast has an increased, like, because you take that away and there's an increased offering bonus to Karazhan cards, Priest of the Feast has a, like, super offering bonus, right? So my question is basically, instead of taking away cards, now you have the power to increase the offering rate of a certain card. So for Warlocks, if you say,
Yeah, I was
oh
about
man,
to say.
I want Demon Fuses all the freaking
Yeah.
time. Let's do it. I want like 6 Demon Fuses offered. You can do that. Anyways, what's your pick?
Void Caller. Either if not Void Caller, then like Dread Inferno. Like, I want because the demon synergies have kind of gone away, and I don't want more Imp Gang bosses. There's enough Imp Gang bosses in this world, and I don't want enough Darkshire Councilmen for the same reason. But I do want the actual, like, good synergy cards, because right now, like, we're lowering Void Caller so much every time I look at it. It's so inconsistent now, and the effect is still really powerful, but more often than not now you're getting smaller demons out than the big ones. So you either need more big demons that are good enough to put in your deck so that Void Callers work, or you just raise Void Caller. Because then you can Void Caller out of Void Caller and it's okay, and you have more turns to, like, figure stuff out after that. Because when you're doing this, you're trying to take a class that has lost a part of its identity and reinforce it, right?
Right.
Blizzard is always on top of the Paladin, so there's no issue there. Mages are fine. I may consider increasing Water Elemental. Rogues are, like we were talking about the Snowchugger. Now the Snowchugger's gone. I don't like Snowchugger, by the way. I do think it should just be more Water Elementals. Snowchugger's a little too cheap. But yeah, like Rogues maybe with Backstab, that would be like a good thing to reinforce its identity in the early going for Shaman, maybe a Flame Tongue Totem. Warrior's in a pretty good spot now. They have a pretty diverse set of, like, a lot of things that do a lot of things. If there's anything I would increase, it's Cruel Taskmaster.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Anyways, you've talked a lot.
Okay, what are you doing? What would you do?
All right, so if I'm going for balance, I would not only give, like, so Priest of the Feast being offered more, I give them more Shrinkmeisters, right?
Yes,
I think
yes.
they actually need Shrinkmeisters to sort of survive and potentially, be competitive, whatever. If I'm having fun, because I'm playing Hunters so freaking much, okay, I want Hunters to be actually good. I want them
Glaive Zukas.
Glaive Zuka, best freaking card in the game when you consider, like, how it fits with the class, right?
Yeah.
There's no way it's actually, like, the best card in the game, but when you're
It's close. It's close.
When you're a hunter and you have a Glaive Zuka, and then you draft the style of hunter that I typically draft, it's the best freaking card in the game.
Definitely.
Right? And it also just fits. Like, hunters should have weapons. It's a hunter. Why doesn't it have weapons?
Well, because it doesn't know how to use any of the weapons. I feel weird giving Rexar more weapons.
That's true. He just hits you.
I know. Like,
anything.
What is wrong with Rexar?
Right. Like, I don't think that's the way that bows are supposed to work, but I don't know.
You should have, like, spears instead.
They should be spears,
That
right?
would
They
make
should be
more
spears.
sense.
Right. That would be much more efficient. Anyways, yeah. So I would do Glaive-Zuka just because I love playing Hunter, and I've been playing Hunter so often recently. I'm just like, man, Glaive-Zuka would probably boost this by 2 wins minimum. So there we go.
It's fair. I totally agree that that would be the card for Hunter to do, which is interesting, right? Because that's like the other cards; they're basically core cards, and Glaive-Zuka came in a GVG, and yet it's so much part of the identity of the Hunter now. Okay. Anyway, a question from the GOAT is brought to you by our patrons at patreon.com/grinninggoat. You guys should check it out if you haven't, and if you're thinking of supporting us, we are 100% supported by our patrons and our Twitch subs. If you enjoy the podcast, and especially if you're getting back into the arena now with the new announcements, I'd really appreciate any support. Okay. The top patrons for... And there was so much happening in August and I didn't have my computer for like 3 weeks. We kind of missed it. So here are the top patrons for both July for August and September. It is 4P, Ingo, Talon, Ugbog, Terrence B, a newcomer, P. Floyd Guy, for both months. Really sorry, P. Floyd Guy. You didn't get a shout out for the first month, and you kept on supporting us for another month, so thank you so much. That's our top patrons for the months of August and September. Okay, so now we're going to get to the most exciting topic, which is Priest. And I will read the list of changes that happened. But as we all know, just to clear the setting, in the Mage dominant meta, Priest should be a good counter, but it is not, because it is that bad. And so it is in a very dire place. Every single arena expert we have talked to has said Priest is the worst. Yeah. Sometimes it gets qualified with, well, this is also pretty bad, but no, Priest is the worst. Last meta, it was Hunter and Priest, and that was also pretty consensus. It was Hunter and Priest. And now Hunter's kind of definitely made it out of the very bottom. Or maybe Hunter hasn't gotten all that much, but actually it has gotten much better. But even if it hasn't gotten that much better, Priest has kind of just kept not being able to do stuff. So the focus of, and Blizzard specifically said they made these changes to address class balance, right? That was their number one goal, because people complain about class balance more than anything else, and people are mostly complaining about mages and priests, right? Arena priests matter, and just too many freaking mages in the arena. There's no hashtag for that. There's just too many mages. And so for the priest, what changes did they make? This is probably the biggest target area outside of how you nerf the mage. Mind Blast, Shadow Bomber, Lightwell, Power Word Glory, Confuse, Convert, Inner Fire. What do you think?
Yeah, okay. The problem with Priest was always, number one, they couldn't get on the board, right?
Yep.
And then number two, all of the cards are situational. Yep. Even their most powerful cards are not independent cards, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what makes the mage so strong and sort of the priest so weak. Because if you just look at the hero powers, for example, priest has a really freaking good hero power, right? Mm-hmm. It's always if you can get into the late game, you will dominate with your hero power. Mind Blast, I can understand, because aggro priest typically does not work out.
This is yes, when we're talking about soul of the class, yes, there's always a shadow aspect to soul of the priest, but no. There should never have been in the arena. It was a weird thing that Blizzard tried to kind of do, in a kind of half-ass kind of way, and then they added more cards to it. And some of the cards, they are a nice change of pace, right? You can Auchenai and go face. You can do what's that card called? The 5/4 mana Inspire card.
Spawn of Shadows.
Spawn of Shadows, which is really cool. I love Spawn of Shadowing and then going face.
I think it's great.
I love it. That's the kind of card that you want to be oh, I'm a nice, slow healing priest. Now I'm going face. You don't want to have a card in your deck that forces you to Mind Blast. And that's kind of the same thing with Shadow Bomber. You have a card in your deck that forces you to just deal damage to everything. It's a very, this is exactly the archetype I am going, and it is an archetype that, as a priest, I can't possibly commit to in the arena.
Yeah, mind blasting. Look, overall, I think they got it pretty. Like, I think the bandwidth for Priest is pretty good, with the exception of Inner Fire. Inner Fire is one of those cards that.
Oh, I love not having Inner Fire.
No. I think Inner Fire is one of those cards that is very like, it's so associated with the Priest, right? So is it like a great card? No, I don't think it's a great card, and I think everyone will agree with that. But I think it has a lot of uses in terms of, like, you can manipulate the health before you do something, right? Like, for example, you have 2 minions on the board. They have 1 big minion. You use Inner Fire to save your second minion, right? You hit in with one, and then you Inner Fire, and then you hit in with the second one. It has a use like that. So Inner Fire is one of those cards in which, yeah, it's not great, but it creates good stories. It can definitely require, it's a little bit setup intensive. It requires you to do math on the board. I think it's just one of those cards that didn't have to go away. But I agree with basically every other card. So
I will say this about Inner Fire. Not only do I have problems, but I think Priest balancing wise has problems whenever you allow the Priest to buff attack. That's why Valence Chosen is so broken. That's why Power Word Tentacles, despite what should be like the worst card ever, is okay. Like, Power Word Tentacles, I think, is a shining example of the worst card ever that has the correct like amount of, oh, this is exactly what is good for the Priest, that it makes up for the fact that it's literally 1 mana overcosted. Like, period. It has no redeeming quality to it that it's 1 mana overcosted.
Yep.
And it's still okay. So Inner Fire kind of takes that. Yeah, it does require the setup. Yeah, you have to know when to like just burn it to reduce 1 damage to a minion, right? Like, it is like a very, it's both, right? It's both a huge combo card, and it's a card that has great stories, and it's a card that pros use better, like much better than new players. But it has so many problems associated with causing huge swings and doing things that I really don't want the Priest to do, and I don't think the Priest should be. Like, you view it as part of like an essential part of the Priest's like identity, right? Part of the soul of the Priest. Yeah. I think that it's literally the only card that does this, and that it's not. It's like the outlier. It's like whenever a class does this a bunch of times, I think of it as part of its kit, right? Like, this is a defining feature of this class. When it's just one card that does it, I think of it as an outlier, and I'm totally okay removing it and getting rid of that part. And that's what I view Inner Fire as. So I'm actually very happy that they got rid of Inner Fire. It's a high swingy kind of card. It causes problems.
Well, no. But like, I think part of the like how you identify it is like, oh man, it boosts like attack or something. Like, I view it as a conditional creature manipulation, which I think is very much so like. Yeah, it's how you frame it, right? It's like how specific you want to look at it versus how general you want to look at it. And I think I'm looking at it in a more general way. I'm like, oh yeah, of course it fits with the Priest. It is conditional minion manipulation, which is what Priest is all about in my opinion.
Priest doesn't really manipulate minions on their attack, though. It's really mostly defense. The attack site is literally just one card. It's Confuse, and they're removing it from the arena too.
They have like Valence Chosen. They have
but that's not. That's just a buff.
For arms. Right.
Yeah, but that's what I mean.
No, this is a buff as well.
Yeah, but this is just an attack buff. Those are all more defense buffs than attack buff. This is just an attack buff. Like, it's a very different like thing. Like, you can't look at, I don't know, Cold Blood the same way you look at Blessing of Kings, right? Like, they're different things. Now, Inner Fire is not Cold Blood, but it's in that middle zone between Cold Blood and Blessing of Kings.
Right. Well, here's the thing. Like, once again, I think it's about how you define. Like, I've always seen Priest manipulation as sort of like tricky, right? Like, that's why they have Confuse, Convert, even the removals. It's always like, well, it's conditional and it's weird, right?
Right.
Like, with Priest, it's always weird, and this fits. It's weird minion manipulation. It's even like more weird because you might want to manipulate, like, you can manipulate a minion on your end.
But it's attack. That's my problem with it. If it was minion manipulation on defense, I would be totally okay with it. Like, if it was change the minion's defense to be the same as its attack, I would be 100% okay with that card. But I think it's problematic because it's breaking the attack defense theme, even if it keeps the manipulation theme. But I don't really think there's that much manipulation theme to begin with, because they're taking away the 2 cards that had the theme.
Yeah.
which is Inner Fire in the original set, which is the only one that existed, and then there's this Confuse, which is new, and I was like, all right, like I'm okay with that being part of the priest kit, but I'm also okay if you just get rid of all of it, right? Like if they decided all of a sudden Mage will no longer freeze, and they got rid of all the freeze cards from the arena, I would be okay with it. I would be more okay with it than if they got rid of half the freeze cards. Like, I think it really should be part of the identity of the hero or not.
All right, that's fair.
So, so Inner Fire is like in and out. But one card for the priest that they did not remove, that I was like, why would you really? This is like Demon Fuse level of why would you not remove this card? Did you just not think about it? It's Twilight Whelp. It's a priest. Why would you want a 2/1?
Look, I understand, and I'll defend them a little bit on it. I think it is a minion that, requires, it's a synergistic sort of early game minion, right? And I think priests not only just need a little bit of early game, people like drafting synergies, right? They like drafting synergies. This is not also a particularly difficult synergy.
Mm-hmm.
So, it doesn't sort of fulfill the, like...
But it's not like there's anything else going for Dragon Priest. I'm okay.
Wait,
I guess there are... Okay,
Dragon
never
Priest?
mind. I take that back. There is stuff going for Dragon Priest.
Yeah,
There's, like, rare cards and stuff.
No, look. Like, Twilight Whelp, people have fun with it, right? People like drafting dragons. Dragons are pretty powerful. Why not have a 1-drop that is just your average 2/1 minion when it fails, right? So the floor of the card is... No, it's not particularly high, but it's fine. And the ceiling is really freaking good.
Well, then,
I think that's a fine priest card.
I just don't like the fact that it's a 1-drop. It's about the same value as like Inner Fire. It's probably worse than Inner Fire and like things like that. In this meta, at least, it's a 1-drop, right? Its value is going to increase and decrease depending on the meta by a lot.
Right.
But it's one of those cards that's like on the chopping block, and they're like, we're gonna keep it, right? And
I can definitely see it as being on the chopping block.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would not have kept it. And one of the reasons I wouldn't have kept it is I would have. By the way, I would have also gotten rid of Inner Fire. I would have also gotten rid of Twilight Whelp, because one of my biggest problems with how they changed the priest, which generally, like I'm okay with it. I wanted them to go farther, right? There wasn't a card in the priest that I was like, oh, we should really have it. Like I want Lightwell in, but I understand the priest is in such a horrible position that sacrifices need to be made, right? It's the same thing as like the warrior.
Yep.
Like you needed to make these sacrifices. It's not like the way they did the hunter. It's not like druid or shaman where you're like, it's not that big of a deal if you didn't do this. Right. Priests need help. You have to get rid of cards, but you can get rid of enough cards. That's my biggest problem. We got rid of 4 commons. Hunters got rid of 5 commons. Warriors got rid of 6 commons. Druid and Shaman got rid of 3 commons. If you look at it this way, they buffed Priest 133 times. 133% times. 133% what they buffed Druid. That's bad.
Sure.
That is, because again, these cards, it doesn't really matter as much how good the cards that you're removing are as it matters that you're removing a card.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
We're going back to this, and the card you're removing is not snipe. Like you have to actually have it in your deck. Like you don't like the card if it has uses for it when it's not in your deck. It's a different story.
Right.
But so we're really not buffing the priest that much because remember it's about class balance. Classes are judged against the other classes. So what happened? Warriors got much better. Hunters got much better. Priest got a bit better. Druid and Shaman got a bit better. Where's the priest? Right? Like, relative to hunters and warriors, it got worse. Relative to druids and shamans, it got a tiny bit better. Only relative to paladin, mage, and rogue did it get significantly better. Which was, I guess, their point, right? Like, they wanted to squeeze it all in. But if you're looking at what the worst class is in this meta, it's still the priest, and it's still by a long shot. Because our problem wasn't just... right? If you looked at the way we were ranking classes, whatever, it's not just like mage, big gap, rogue, gap, paladins, whatever, right? It's also all these bunches of other classes that we will call like the middle of the meta, and then big gap priest. That was always a problem. That has not been fixed. That has been made worse, if anything. Like, in a really crazy way, this class balancing patch, and I think this is the biggest takeaway for priests, which is also kind of like one of the things that happened where I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't know what your team was thinking if you're thinking about balancing the priest by doing this. And it's that priests are now even more the worst class in the arena. After the balancing patch, they have made priests more definitively the worst class in the arena than before the balancing patch.
Yeah.
That's weird, right?
I think they're setting up something.
Yeah.
Like they looked at it. Part of the reason why they were okay with putting out Purify is like, oh well, like this patch along with the next patch, I think will make things better for the priest, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like when they might have, I don't know, like when things were so bad with the warrior, and then they rolled out Fierce Monkey and Obsidian Destroyer, and suddenly things were kind of okay with the warrior,
Yep.
right?
So we're about to play the priest afterwards, and at first I was like, oh, we're playing the priest right before the big buff. And then I looked at it more, and I'm like, well, we're playing priest right before the big buff, only if we would have played Mage, Rogue, or Paladin otherwise. Because if you were to play any of the other classes, they would actually get even more buffed than the priest would. So priest is actually in like the middle zone of how much they buffed or nerfed the things. Like if you were to draw a chart of like things that gain power and things that lost power, priest is in the middle. It's not in the huge gaining power section. That's where like warrior's at. There's something to be said for the fact that, you know, the priest cards that are removed are really, really trash. But you've had a very low % chance of picking those cards anyway. Like, I'm sure Blizzard internally has a whole thing about like, you know, these cards are picked this much, but that's exaggerated compared to how much you would actually pick the card, because there's a whole bunch of people who don't know what they're doing, right? Or new players. Or players who are playing for fun and creating these like combo decks.
Play for fun.
Yeah, and that's going to skew everything like hugely compared to where you would. And those people don't care about arena balance. Is kind of my point, right? Like, or to the extent that they care about it, they'll live with it no matter what it is, right? Until they become the kind of players that are more along, like, you know, maybe not as intense as we are or our audience is, but of the kind of players that like care a lot more about winning, care about improving, and care about like interclass fairness, right? That's like a deeper concept than just like fairness in the arena. So like I said, right, this goes back to the whole like stats thing. It's misleading. It's always misleading because you can never, in order to interpret statistics, you need to know what's going on. But if you know what's going on, then you don't really need the statistics. All the statistics will do is to make sure you're not totally wrong. Like, if you have an interpretation, and then you look at the stats, and it's like going the total opposite way, and you have like no good explanation for that, well then you're probably like not seeing the full picture. I mean, you're definitely not seeing the full picture. But it doesn't work like stats are here, and we work from the stats. It works from, you have a theory of how this whole thing works. You understand the truth behind something. And then you use the stats to check yourself and make sure that you're not wrong. Stats can never tell you what's right. Stats can only tell you that you're not wrong. And so, if you work off of stats, which it seems like it's what they're doing, you're just, and especially if you don't work like very deeply off of them, if you just like kind of like take them for what they are in the very beginning and then say, well, that's as much as we're going to think onto it, you're almost certainly just going to be wrong. In terms of not having a full picture. Not like you're totally wrong, but you have a huge chunk of things that's just like missing. And so if you make decisions based on it, you could potentially go the wrong way. Because, but that's what they have, right? And that's their defense mechanism, right? We need to do something. We need justification. We need objective justification. Stats are pretty much the only objective thing that you can get with this, right? Like, we'll say a whole bunch of stuff. You talk to other arena experts, they may say different stuff. Like, who are you going to trust? Like, if you're trying to pitch this to your boss, it's a lot less convincing than, oh, look, stats. Especially if your boss doesn't understand how the arena works that well, right? Like, it's just kind of trust in something. And it also really pleases the audience, right? People, not just the Blizzard design team who has the stats, but just people in general. Like, very much.
It's very easy to say, for someone to ask why, and you to say stats,
and then they say okay. It's not even like they don't get pissed off like we do. They're like, okay, yeah, stats. And so it makes stats really, really good if your goal is to make people happy. And if you're a game designer, your goal is to make people happy. And when people are rioting, like with this whole mage thing, your goal is to stop that. You know, your goal is to make people think the arena is balanced. It's not really to actually balance the arena.
Right. Okay. Now, let me just say this. It has been about 2 hours and change of us sort of going through all of this and just speaking honestly and sort of ripping into Blizzard. But I will reiterate what we said at the very beginning, okay? This is good.
Yes.
Like, overall.
Big picture. More positives than negatives by a long shot.
So good. The fact that, number one, they're doing anything at all.
Anything at all. Very good.
Number two, it seems like they did put thought into this.
Yes. There was definitely thought in it.
There was thought in it. And
we are just critiquing like how good they are at thinking about it, but it definitely like was not something they like slapped together, and was like, all right, let's do it.
Right. And number three, like the fact that they said, we understand this doesn't fix this solution. We will come up with something that will be more elegant / more long-term later on, but we identify that there is a problem now, right? I think that's fantastic.
Yep, definitely.
Doing that, and it's been 2 years of basically being like, we care about the arena, but we're not going to change it. We care about the arena, but we're not going to change it. And now they're like, change is coming, guys. So thank you, Blizzard. That's awesome. I know we just spent the past 2 hours basically being like, what are you guys thinking? That was a wrong choice. I would have done this. You guys have no idea what we're talking about. No, but this is...
We're very happy that stuff was done and that things are happening, and there was a thoughtful approach to it, and it will make the arena class balance much better overall. It's just we critique because there's ways to make it better. Okay, so that's it for the Lightforge. It has been really long. We will, if you're watching this live right now or you're doing it on YouTube, check out the Arena Coop. It's coming up right after this in like 2-3 minutes. And we are doing a priest run to end the limited priest meta that we're in, the Karazhan, the short-term Karazhan meta, where the gap between the top class and the bottom class is probably as wide as it was back in the bad days of TGT between like Mage and Paladin and Warrior. Okay. I'm ADWCTA.
This is Merps. See you guys.
See you guys.